Drinking black tea calmly at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501 Young Man, do you know Hogwarts? 1. It was 5 minutes to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and in a villa located 10 minutes drive from Liverpool University, the hostess was making final preparations in the kitchen for the afternoon tea time that would start in a while. Looking from the kitchen window, today is a rare sunny and breezy day, the hostess saw her son put the last chair by the round table in the garden, and then hurried to the house. In less than a minute, the hostess heard her son's voice at the door of the kitchen. "Mom, are the snacks ready?" "Don't worry, Michael." The hostess smiled and said to the anxious son, "Everything is ready, be careful not to fall." "No, Mom," Michael said proudly, "I wouldn't fall if I had the ball with me at the same time." After Michael finished speaking, he picked up the plate with snacks on the cabinet and walked out of the kitchen. After watching her son leave, the hostess sighed, not knowing whether it was a blessing or a curse for her son, who aspired to be a football superstar, to go to a school called Hogwarts. 4 months ago, after returning from watching Liverpool v Wimbledon in the Premier League, the son who has always loved football and was outstanding in the school football league, fell in love with him and himself on the pitch from the first moment. The youngest player and youngest goal scorer in the history of the Liverpool club with the same name. At a later Liverpool club open day, his son got an autographed photo with his idol. However, one day in July, a soaring owl disrupted the peaceful life of the family. After some panic, surprise and correspondence with owls, the family finally accepted the fact that this world has magic and that their son is a wizard. It's just that the family who still had concerns hadn't made a final decision about their son's future until 2 days before the start of school. Later, they wrote a letter to the headmaster of Hogwarts, hoping that the school would send a teacher to come home be a guest, let everyone know everything about the wizarding world in an all-round way, and then let the owl who is on duty in their garden deliver the letter away. One morning before school started, the owl delivered a letter that a guest from Hogwarts would visit the Owens on time at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Half a minute before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mrs. Owen and her son prepared afternoon tea in the garden, and Mr. Owen was already at the door, dressed neatly, as if he was going to negotiate a business worth hundreds of millions of pounds with an important client. Then get ready. When the second hand of Mr. Owen's watch jumped to X2, the doorbell rang on time. Mr. Owen took a deep breath to relax himself, and then put on a friendly and confident expression that was necessary when he was about to negotiate with clients in the financial city on the east side of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and finally opened the door. After opening the door, Mr. Owen was taken aback, but after years of hard work, he recovered his previous expression in an instant. When they knew that there was a guest coming today, the family guessed whether the guest who came this afternoon was a wizard in a scruffy robe, or a ghost, a giant, or a panda in Dumbledore and Hogwarts. A magical existence that appeared during tea time. However, what Mr. Owen didn't expect was that there was a man of yellow race wearing a neat suit outside the door, whose appearance and demeanor were just like those young and successful rich and generations in the financial city. For a moment, he thought it was a client from work who came to visit him. "Hello, Mr. Owen." Zhang Su didn't mind the other party's reaction. What he minded was Professor Flitwick, who asked him to run errands instead of him. "I'm a student of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Witchcraft, Zhang Su." Mr. Owen quickly realized that, as the account manager of the company, he has no lack of experience in dealing with Oriental people. "Hello, Mr. Zhang, welcome to come." After a simple greeting and handshake, Mr. Owen led Zhang Su to the back garden, followed by a round of greetings with Mrs. Owen and Michael, and then the four of them sat down. "Michael, I brought you some small gifts." Zhang Su took out a large box from his suit pocket and handed it to Michael. Michael, who seemed a little cautious, took the box Zhang Su handed over. After reading the words on the box clearly, an expression of surprise appeared on his face in an instant. "Is this the chocolate frog?" Michael asked. The Owens also looked at Zhang Su curiously. "That's right, this is the chocolate frog." Zhang Su nodded and replied. Michael opened the box carefully, and took out a small pentagonal box inside, and opened it nervously. The next moment, a frog made of chocolate jumped out of the box and landed on the edge of Michael's teacup. "It's really going to pop out," Michael said excitedly. "It's amazing," exclaimed Mr. Owen. This is a field frog, Mrs. Owen said seriously. Zhang Su looked at Mrs. Owen in surprise. He had eaten chocolate frogs for so many years, and it was only now that he knew what kind of frog this frog was. After seeing Zhang Su's surprised gaze, Mrs. Owen smiled and said to him, "I am a professor of animal science researching amphibians at the University of Liverpool." Seeing Zhang Su nodding to herself, Mrs. Owen thought so wizards don't know everything, and the nervousness disappeared a lot. Pictures Michael of the comics took out a wizard card from the chocolate frog's box. It belongs to Albus Dumbledore. Michael excitedly held up the picture in his hand and showed it to everyone. After the episode brought by the chocolate frog, everyone began to get into the topic. "May I ask what position does Mr. Zhang hold at Hogwarts?" Mr. Owen asked first. Zhang Su straightened his expression, and then replied, "I am a 7th-year student at Hogwarts Ravenclaw College, and I am also an acting professor of Muggle Studies." During breakfast this morning, news came from St. Mungo's Hospital that Professor Carrie Dibagi, who was unfortunately injured in the hostage rescue operation, had not recovered from her injuries, so Professor McGonagall told her to rest well, and then Zhang Su went back to life. The life of changing homework every night. "So you will also be teaching while you are in class?" Mrs. Owen then asked. She is also a professor, so she responds faster than others in this regard. "Yes," Zhang Su replied, "because Professor Carrie Dibagi is ill, I will replace all her teaching tasks in the next year." The Owens looked at each other, and then nodded to each other invisibly. It seems that Hogwarts didn't just find a cat or a dog to send here. "It's hard work like this?" Mrs. Owen asked. "Yes," Zhang Su sighed, "especially when changing homework." Mrs. Owen nodded in agreement. "Then the giant panda in the cartoon teaching the students is you?" Michael asked suddenly. Zhang Su grinned and nodded. Chapter 502 Young Man, do you know Hogwarts? 2. Zhang Su's transformation into a living panda brought today's tea party to a climax. It could be seen that the Owen family still had a lot of questions to ask, so he immediately changed back under the excited, surprised and slightly disappointed eyes of the family. After Zhang Su sat down on the chair again, Mr. Owen asked, "Mr. Zhang, what do you wizards think of us ordinary people you call muggles?" Zhang Su took a sip of tea, and then said, "On this question, I have no intention of hiding some dark parts of the answer. On the whole, the attitude of wizards towards ordinary people is basically very friendly. Many wizards choose ordinary people as their partners in life. The new headmaster of our school, Professor McGonagall, her first love is the son of an ordinary farmer. It's just that for some reason, they didn't get together in the end. However, a small number of wizards will look down on or even discriminate against ordinary people who have no power in their eyes because they have mastered extraordinary power. In school, most of these people are just disrespectful in language. However, generally speaking, the situation is developing for the better. Among the younger generation of wizards, the proportion of ordinary people who can treat ordinary people equally is getting higher and higher. And among the current students, the achievements of wizards whose parents are ordinary people are no less than those of wizards from wizard families who have been self-proclaimed for hundreds of years. Zhang Su spoke seriously, and Owen's family also listened seriously. He didn't hide from the Owen family that those pure-blood families discriminated against Muggle-born wizards, and described Hogwarts as a white lotus because these things cannot be hidden, and there is no need to hide them. Before he came, he already had a general understanding of the Owen family. Mr. Owen is engaged in financial work. It can be said that he has dealt with nonsense all day long. Mrs. Owen teaches at Liverpool University and knows all about the stories and accidents under the water of the school. Although their understanding of the wizarding world is very unfamiliar, people have something in common, and they can easily tell whether they are telling the truth or lying. "Well, it seems that discrimination is everywhere," Mr. Owen said with emotion. "Big companies discriminate against small companies, and graduates of famous universities discriminate." Amidst the gentle cough of his wife, Mr. Owen slammed on the brakes. "If Michael went to Hogwarts, he wouldn't be hurt by those people," Mrs. Owen said with concern. "It's enough to beat back like a man," Zhang Su replied. This answer is obviously in line with Mr. Owen's appetite. When he was young, he coincided with the victory of the Falklands War. Mrs. Thatcher's tough style of tit-for-tat obviously had a great impact on him. "What about jobs after graduation?" Mrs. Owen asked. "We know from the books that wizards don't have many jobs after graduation." To be honest, it's not easy for Zhang Su to answer this question, because with the current social status of the Owen couple, they might not like those jobs in the magic world. At this moment, Zhang Su could only tell the truth. To be honest, I have always had reservations about working in the British wizarding world. Zhang Su curled his lips. Owen and his wife were surprised when they saw Zhang Su's appearance, and then frowned slightly. Parents are very concerned about the future of their children. Zhang Su continued, graduates with excellent grades generally join the Ministry of Magic, which is the department where wizards manage wizards themselves. As for other students, let me put it this way, the current British Magical Society is still in the economic structure dominated by handicrafts before the First Industrial Revolution. Although this society is changing now, the speed of change is too slow. In my personal opinion, I don't want Michael to live in that kind of lifeless world. The Owens frowned. Mrs. Owen said cautiously, then it will be difficult for us to agree to Michael's study at Hogwarts. We must be responsible for his future. Zhang Su understood Mrs. Owen's caution, because she was afraid of accidentally offending someone Zhang, and then being cast by him all kinds of weird magic. Michael, who was sitting next to Zhang Su, couldn't sit still, but he knew that at such a time, his parents' opinions must be taken seriously. I can understand your worries. Zhang Su replied with a smile, if I also have children, I will also have this idea. Mr. Zhang, just now you emphasized that what you said was the magical world, so can I understand that it would be different in the world of our ordinary people? Accustomed to finding and discovering useful words in the other party's language during negotiations, Mr. Owen, who is detail-oriented, immediately discovered something worthy of attention in Zhang Su's words. Yes, some of the people in Downing Street are wizards working for the British government. Zhang Su nodded slightly and replied, a member of the House of Lords I know is a member of the British royal family. Wizards who have served families for hundreds of years, whose ancestors can be found in the history books. Besides that, I also know some wizards from the military and intelligence services. The three views of the Owen couple have been refreshed, and Zhang Su also took this opportunity to briefly popularize the history of this aspect to them. It took them a while to accept this fact. At this time, Zhang Su asked Mrs. Owen, Ms. Owen, I wonder if you have heard of the Prometheus project that the British government recently secretly implemented in the Red Brick University. Mrs. Owen suddenly looked at Zhang Su vigilantly. She had only heard about this plan a little bit, and this plan had a certain level of confidentiality. She knew about this plan because her mentor had accidentally mentioned it. The content of this plan is that Red Brick University will prepare to accept a group of extremely special students. Thinking of this, Mrs. Owen suddenly had a flash of light in her mind. Could it be that the extremely special student refers to someone like her son? She glanced at her son silently, and then cast a questioning look at Zhang Su. Zhang Su met her gaze and nodded silently. After getting an affirmative answer, Mrs. Owen breathed a sigh of relief. For her who has received higher education, her son will leave the society after only receiving a slightly better education than the 5-year middle school, which is intolerable to her now that she knows that her son still has the opportunity to continue his higher education. She is finally relieved. Owen and his son looked at the two people who didn't know what kind of riddle they were playing in a daze, and didn't know what this Mr. Zhang meant by the plan. Then Mrs. Owen briefly explained the content of the plan to the father and son, and she couldn't explain it in detail, because she knew very little. Regarding this, Mr. Zhang smiled and said nothing while drinking tea, because he also had some concerns about this plan. Over the past few years, many outstanding graduates from Hogwarts and Bokspritons have traveled eastward for further studies, which has aroused the attention of the governments of Western Europe. After some deliberation, the governments of various countries have secretly launched their own wizardry education programs. As far as Zhang Su knows, when the British plan was first formulated, relevant government departments quietly visited the vast majority of Muggle-born senior students in Hogwarts during the Christmas holiday last year and this summer vacation, asking for their opinions and suggestions. A few days ago, while Zhang was avoiding Harry's pursuit, Hermione secretly asked him for his opinion on this matter. At the same time, she wondered why the government knew about her at Hogwarts. For the first question, Mr. Zhang was supportive at the time. He always felt that Hermione's intelligence and talents could not be fully utilized by relying on the knowledge learned at Hogwarts. If she could go to a university for systematic education, then better. As for the second question, the list of students is definitely not in Zhang's handwriting. He was a little pleased with the poaching of the corners of the British Magical Society. As for the issue of competing with domestic universities for talents, It is useless to worry about it. The domestic instruction is to sell favors to the British government, and the quality of magic teaching in domestic universities is definitely better than that of British universities that have just started. In addition, the first batch of international students are preparing to graduate and return to the UK. Under their propaganda, they must have a huge competitive advantage. After a while, Owen and his son were relieved after learning about the British government's movements from Mrs. Owen. Chapter 503 Young Man, do you know Hogwarts? 3. Mrs. Owen immediately went to call her mentor to find out, and she brought back positive news a few minutes later. After a brief discussion, the Owen family reached a preliminary consensus on Michael's future continuing education. If the British government is really promoting higher education for young wizards, it would be a good choice for Michael to follow such a path. After all, special university admissions have a higher pass rate than ordinary college entrance examination candidates. Next, there is only one core issue that the Owens are most concerned about, and that is safety. In daily study, as long as you don't make too many mistakes and follow the steps and precautions that the professors said, safety is no problem. Zhang Su said seriously, there have also been incidents in the school that protect magical animals. There are examples of reckless students who disobeyed the professor and were attacked and injured after provoking the hippogriff in class, but that was just an example. But now the safety and security measures for students in class have been further strengthened. Even if there are students, being stupid doesn't hurt. The first business of Fred and George's Weasley's Wizard Wheezes in Hogwarts was that the twins successfully sold the first generation of Iron Armor Curse defense caps to Dumbledore, making it a part of the Protection of Magical Animals class on the standard equipment. You know, we're always a little apprehensive about the unknown, said Mr. Owen. For example, in our legend, the mandrake is a plant that can kill people just by its sound, but in our book I see it happening quite often. Then Zhang Su made a pot of salad on the spot with 2 fresh mandrakes that he brought in before going out this morning to dispel Mr. Owen's concerns. Very crispy and refreshing. Very well hydrated. It tastes a bit sweet. This is the Owen family's first impression of the mandrakes, so much so that 2 years later, Professor Sprout had to specifically remind Michael about the dangers of mandrakes, and at the same time, he made some guy who had graduated into fertilizer in his heart. Actually, the biggest danger now is not inside the school, but outside the school. Zhang Su said to the Owen family who were tasting the mandrake salad. In the next half an hour, Zhang Su told the Owen family about the current security problems facing the UK. The great harm caused by Voldemort is no longer limited to the magical world, and more ordinary people have been harmed. The faces of the Owen family turned slightly pale after hearing this, just like the mandrake roots on the plate just now. However, Hogwarts is now one of the safest places in the UK. Zhang Su said, the British government and the Ministry of Magic have made great efforts to protect Hogwarts, and Hogwarts itself has perfect defensive measures and emergency response plans for emergencies. When necessary, Michael and his junior students will evacuate to a safe area through safe passages. I can guarantee that before our senior students and professors die, they won't be harmed in any way. The originally cheerful atmosphere in the garden turned into low pressure at this time, and everyone was thinking about what Zhang Su said just now. Michael, you can make up your own mind on this matter. Mr. Owen suddenly said to his son, there are many crossroads in a person's life, but there are only a few of the most important crossroads. Now you are standing at the crossroads of life. At the most critical crossroads in life, your mother and I have given you the right to choose. No matter what choice you make, we will support you. Seeing his father's firm eyes, his mother's kind eyes and Zhang Su's encouraging eyes all falling on him, Michael fell into deep thought after being flustered for a while. Michael originally wanted to be a part of galloping on the green field, but when a colorful new world was placed in front of him, he was caught in a dilemma. And he knew that what was in front of him was a single choice question, and he had no chance to choose all of them. After a full 10 minutes, Michael finally made a decision. He pulled a coin out of his pocket, his lucky 50p coin he picked up on the sidelines before his first school league win. From that day on, he used the coin as a talisman. After Michael kissed the Britannia on the coin, he tossed the coin into the air. The Owens knew that their son had the habit of tossing coins in decision, so they didn't say anything. If they didn't say anything, Zhang Su couldn't do anything to show it. With a snap, Michael covered the coin that fell from the air on the back of his right hand. After taking a deep breath, he carefully removed his left hand covering the coin. With a sigh of relief, Michael sat back on the chair as if he had lost all his strength. After a while, he sat up straight, and then announced to everyone, We are going to Hogwarts. Welcome to Hogwarts. Zhang Su stretched out his right hand to Michael. After the two shook hands, Mr. Owen said to Michael, "Whatever your decision is, we support your decision." Greek letter Psi dividing line Greek letter Psi. As many merchants settled in Hogsmeade, a huge passenger flow also followed, which posed a major challenge to the security capabilities of the Ministry of Magic. At the same time, many residents of Hogsmeade live the lives of renters and renters. In an alley not far from the bustling commercial street, it has now become a restaurant street. At a new restaurant called The Kitchen in the basement, Zhang invited the Irving family, who had come to buy supplies for the next day's school, to dinner. This store was opened by a pair of students from Badger Academy who just graduated this year. The two of them are acquaintances of Zhang Su, and it seems that the two of them have plans to open this store as a husband and wife joint. You can tell from the name of the restaurant that it has a strong taste of Hogwarts, and the layout inside is almost exactly the same as the Hogwarts kitchen. There are round tables next to the huge fireplace, but the four long tables not far away, the table is naturally much shorter. During breakfast, lunch and dinner every day, the same Hogwarts meals will appear on the four long tables, which belong to the buffet area. The round table next to the fireplace belongs to the elegant seat area for ordering food. It can be seen that this is a restaurant with strong feelings. The Owen family looked at this unique restaurant curiously, discussing in a low voice what they had just seen at the Hogsmeade branch of Gringotts. Zhang Su was busy responding to the acquaintances who greeted him in the store. Soon, the Owen family was attracted by the dragon meat set meal that suddenly appeared on the table. Chapter 504 Saving the Twins. At midnight, the road is silent. The moon also loses its memory. They look at each other and smile under the lights so lonely. Parvati Patil and Padma Patil sat together on the sofa in the room, sometimes looking at the balcony door, sometimes looking at each other speechlessly. "Do you think he will come?" Parvati asked Padma beside her, with a hint of anxiety in her voice. "It is already midnight." "He will definitely come after receiving the news," Padma said firmly. "But mother and them?" Parvati turned her head worriedly and looked in the direction of the door of the room. At this time, there should be two wizards from the Patil family standing outside the door. Under the window and the balcony, there are also wizards from the family there to prevent the two sisters from escaping. Thinking of the predicament they are facing now, the twin sisters sighed deeply at the same time. Parvati and Padma have known since childhood that if they lived step by step, they would face the life they would face in the future. As girls in Indian families, their role is only a marriage tool for the family. They will be sold by the family to men from other families that have already been found, and then live the life of a canary on the surface. If the natal family is useless to the husband's family, or the husband needs to marry a woman from a more useful family, then the only thing waiting for them is accidental death one day. The reason why they came to Hogwarts was because their family planned to let them try to seduce classmates from the British family. As the spokesman for the memory of the British Magical Society in India, the Patil family needs to further deepen their relationship with the UK. At that time, the Patil family even prepared a list of targets. The Malfoy family, the Weasley family, the Longbottom family, the Macmillan family and other men of the right age from the Holy 28 clans were all on the list. Later, a certain troublemaker suddenly appeared, and the two sisters also received instructions from the family to poach the wall last year. The two sisters planned to pretend to be Zhang's girlfriend to escape the shackles of the family. This is not without reason. It was only when the two sisters came to Hogwarts and came into contact with this world of female self-esteem, self-improvement, and self-reliance, especially under the influence of the orthodox feminist Professor McGonagall, they began to treat the members of the family as if they were in shackles. Life produces disgust. The longer they stayed at Hogwarts, the stronger their mentality became. Recently, their parents often lamented that their hearts were broken and their daughters were hard to take care of. Ever since Voldemort came back out of the rivers and lakes, the Patil family, who were deeply impressed by the British magical world, had planned to let the two of them leave the UK and return to India to marry. It was only the insistence of the two sisters, the persuasion of Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall, and the death of the unlucky guy who was going to marry them in Voldemort's terrorist attack, which allowed them to spend their 6th year at Hogwarts. Only 2 months ago, Dumbledore was gone. They had planned to flee to China with Zhang Su after the end of the school year, but Zhang Su was not on the UK at the time, and the two sisters, who had nowhere to escape, were taken back to India by their family members. Fortunately, before Zhang Su left, he sent a letter to Mrs. Maxim, the principal of Oaksbuttons, to explain the situation. Just when the twin sisters were about to be taken to cell, Mrs. Maxim's letter arrived in their hands. At the last straw, the two sisters persuaded their family to let them stay in Europe for another year based on a letter. At that time, the Paddle family thought that Britain was in a mess, and it would be nice if they could connect with France, so they agreed to go to Oaksbuttons to try. After my sister arrived in France not long ago, she explained the situation to Mrs. Maxim. Mrs. Maxim, who understands righteousness, waved her hand and came and went as she pleased. If you want to stay in France, I welcome you. If you want to go to England, I will send you there. It's a pity that half of them traveled hundreds of miles. They quietly arrived in London the day before school started, preparing to board the train to Hogwarts the next morning. What they didn't expect was that they ran into their mother in London, who happened to come to London to inquire about the news, and then the two of them were caught by the mother, who had insight into their plan, and they were locked up in the Paddle family's prison, in a manor on the outskirts of London. Fortunately, Padma is the prefect of the Eagle Academy, and she has a prefect-specific communicator on her body. She sent a distress message when her mother and other guards were not paying attention. It's just that Padma has no idea at the moment. She doesn't know how effective the communicator is, so she can only pray that she happens to be in London now and sees the message before the two of them are brought back to India tomorrow. Parvati stood up anxiously, walked around the room a few times and then came back. You said Zhang wouldn't call in later, right? Parvati asked her sister. It's still that he thinks we're not worthy of him coming to save us. Parvati said again, worrying about gains and losses. How did you tell Zhang? Parvati asked her sister. Padma looked around. The door of the room was locked, and thick curtains had been drawn on the window. After confirming that no one could see what was going on here, she carefully took out the Hogwarts from under her skirt communicator. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the room. Madam, please go to the living room immediately after dressing up. Padma was startled, and hurriedly stuffed the communicator back under her skirt. Okay, we got it. Parvati shouted in the direction of the door, with a hint of panic in her voice. If their mother wants to talk to them, they don't need to dress up and go there. They need to dress up in advance, indicating that there are guests to meet. It's just that the two sisters who went to meet the guests at this time also thought of some unpopular sisters in the family who were sold out and never seen again. What to do? Parvati was about to cry. Padma gritted her teeth, walked to the dressing table and sat down, and began to dress herself up, while saying, we can only follow the plan, leave here first, and then we will find a way to escape to Hogwarts. Parvati also made up her mind, sat down in front of the dressing table, and said, no matter what, the two of us must not be separated at that time. When you have the chance, you should run first and go to Hogwarts to rescue me. 15 minutes later, the beautifully dressed Paddle sisters walked out of the room and walked downstairs to the living room. In the hallway, they could hear their mother showing off the dowry that the other sisters had sold. The two sisters looked at each other and smiled wryly. At this time, their mother was talking about such a topic with others, which showed that the mother was very satisfied with the sales object this time, and now she was increasing the price for herself. Now they can only hope that the other party can be confused by themselves, and then relax their vigilance, so that they have a chance to escape. Even if it's time to make a little doctor like letting the other party touch it a few times, he will not hesitate. Helpless, the two made trained smiles and walked towards the living room. When they came to the living room, the Paddle sisters looked dazed, because in the living room, besides Zhang, there were Anthony Goldstein, Ernie Macmillan, Ron Weasley, and a gentleman textbook Draco Malfoy, who was usually sitting quietly on the sofa, and the four male prefects of the same grade were all present. Chapter 505. How about a marriage between the Malfoy family and the Weasley family? At 1 o'clock in the morning, Zhang Su left the Paddle family's manor in London with a smile on his face, with Parvati in his left hand and Padma in his right, followed by four younger brothers carrying luggage. After walking out of the gate, Zhang Su turned around and said to Mrs. Paddle, who sent them to the gate, Madam, it's getting late, please go back. Mrs. Paddle, who was not yet 40 and was at the peak of her mature charm, smiled at Zhang Su, and then returned to the house with her staff. Walking on the road in the suburbs late at night, the twin sisters of Paddle are still in a daze. Not long ago, they were still thinking about how to escape from the manor, but now they have walked out of the gate openly as if in a dream. The two sisters couldn't help but hug Zhang Su's arms tightly at the same time. You said how much we should ask Zhang for hush money. Ron, who was walking behind carrying a huge and heavy suitcase, asked in a low voice to Anthony Goldstein and Ernie Macmillan, who were also porters. "Just now you also heard that Mrs. Paddle meant to marry the two sisters to Zhang at the same time. Maybe what we are holding now is their dowry." Anthony and Ernie rolled their eyes at Ron. "If you want to die, don't drag our two good students into the water. How about I treat you to a bottle of drink, Mr. Weasley?" Zhang Su turned his head and said to Ron, in which he deliberately elongated part of the pronunciation of the word sir. Ron immediately thought of his miserable buddy, and immediately shut his mouth. Anthony and Ernie glanced at each other. They immediately discovered something was wrong, and immediately asked Zhang Su what was going on with the drink. Even Malfoy, who was silent and dragging the two heaviest suitcases, pretended to be indifferent to their conversation, pricked up his ears, and took 2 steps closer to them unknowingly. Zhang Su didn't answer the two of them directly, but just pretended to be profound and told them that they would know when the time came. A group of people walked on the road for a few minutes, and when they turned a few turns and Paddle Manor was completely blocked by the forest, Zhang Su and the others stopped. It finally came out. This operation was a complete success. Zhang Su said after a sigh of relief. After speaking, he wanted to pull his hands from the front of the two sisters, but he failed at the first attempt. Anthony also breathed a sigh of relief. "I thought the worst would happen." Ernie wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "I was so nervous just now, I almost couldn't control my hands to pull out my wand several times." "You guys have to have confidence in Zhang." Ron was not nervous at all. "If we go to fight Death Eaters with Zhang, we need to do it anyway, but if we go to propose marriage with him, everyone can rest assured." After Ron finished speaking, he turned his attention to the Death Eaters among them. At this moment, Malfoy, who was trembling, found that he was surrounded. At this moment, a girl's voice sounded not far away. "Everyone is connected." Hermione and several others ran out from the nearby woods. "I even brought back the dowry." Ron took a step aside after speaking, and hid behind Malfoy, looking from Zhang Su's direction. At this time, the two sisters of Paddle have entered another ignorance from one ignorance. Looking at Zhang Su, who brought her out, and Hermione, Hannah, Neville, Daphne, and Luna, who just came from a distance, Parvati asked, "Why are you here?" Padma sent the distress message to the group. Zhang Su explained to the two of them, "You should thank Malfoy, he was in London who received your distress message, and then notified Daphne, and then Daphne contacted us. So we made 2 plans." Hermione went on to explain, "First of all, Zhang and the others tried to bring you out in the name of your boyfriends. They are all families with status in the UK. When the time comes, whichever one your mother likes will become your boyfriend. Obviously, we are not as attractive as Zhang." Anthony shrugged at the twin sisters. "Your mother sold you to Zhang like a salesman at first, and even the young master of the Minister of Magic's family didn't like it gone. If we hadn't reached an agreement at the time, we would have directly robbed people." Anthony continued, "Then Granger and the others are here to meet us. Thank you everyone." Parvati and Padma kept thanking the students who took the risk to save themselves. "This is what we should do." Ron said, "We will not give up any of our partners. And the ending is happy now, isn't it? How many girls in Hogwarts want to be Zhang's girlfriend? In the end, you did it. It's just that you usually pay attention to a certain professor." Zhang Su ignored Ron, who was chattering, and said to Malfoy, "Malfoy, is your family interested in marrying the Weasley family?" As soon as Zhang Su's words fell, Malfoy insisted on the principle of saying less mistakes and no good, but he didn't answer. But Ron jumped up first. "I'm against this marriage. I don't allow Ginny to marry this guy, even if he has made meritorious service today." Zhang Su looked at the irritable Ron, and said flatly, "I'm not talking about Ginny, I'm talking about you, Ms. Luo and Weasley. I support it." Hermione was the first to jump out to make up the knife. "We need a spy who can penetrate into the enemy's interior. No matter how you look at it, Ron who turned into a woman is the best choice. Remember to call me at the wedding." Neville nodded and made up the knife. "Anyway, Malfoy has a history of molesting a boy after turning him into a girl." Anthony made it up to Malfoy. The scene fell silent for a while, but after Anthony's reminder, everyone found that the plan was extremely feasible. Malfoy, who was already trembling, trembled even more now. Ron thought about it and found that Zhang's proposal was indeed very feasible, so he also started to tremble. "Okay, we'll talk about the marriage between the Malfoy family and the Weasley family later." As the leader of the group, Zhang Su cut down the crooked building and built a new one. "Malfoy, I hope you show up tomorrow on the train to Hogwarts. What impossible except for the few who lived in Hogwarts these few days, everyone else made a puzzled sound. This is what Dumbledore said in his will to Hogwarts. Zhang-Su said, he said that Malfoy can still be rescued. I hope we don't give up on Malfoy's treatment. Well, it should be help. Ron and the others had heard Professor McGonagall talk about this matter, and they helped Zhang-Su confirm the authenticity at this time. Since it was Dumbledore's request before his death, I can only follow his last wish. Ernie looked at Malfoy and gritted his teeth and said, but that doesn't mean I will forgive him. Others said they shared Ernie's attitude. Everyone turned their attention to Malfoy, who was standing in the middle of them, and student Xioma was in dire straits at the moment. Let's go back first. Zhang-Su said to the others, Malfoy, if you want to come back tomorrow, please contact me 5 minutes before the train leaves. Then Zhang-Su discovered a difficult problem, how to arrange the two sisters' paddle tonight. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506 Woo Boom Boom. Greek letter Zeta boom boom boom. Amidst the sound of the old steam train, Zhang-Su looked at Hermione sitting opposite him in the carriage, and felt that the scene in front of him seemed familiar. All the prefects were sent to be on duty in each compartment, so that they could assume command duties in the event of an emergency. After the senior students entered the platform, they were issued a train ticket by the prefect of their age, and they needed to sit in the carriage marked on the ticket in case of an accident. They will form the backbone force to protect the junior students under the command of the prefect. The prefects were all sent out, and only the acting male student council president and the female student council president were left in the prefect's carriage. To put it bluntly, a certain guy wanted to be lazy and didn't want to walk so much, so he tailored this plan for himself. I remember when we first met, sitting in a car with only 2 people like this. Hermione, who broke the silence first, said while looking at Zhang-Su, at that time you always looked out the window, looks a little depressed. It's been 6 years in a blink of an eye, and today is the last time we go to Hogwarts by train. Zhang-Su said with some emotion, at least we don't have to worry about Neville coming to ask us if we have seen his pets. Gone. As soon as Zhang-Su finished speaking, Lai Fu flew out from under his stool, and then flew out of the carriage door. It seems that the pursuit of freedom cannot be wiped out in just 6 years. After Zhang-Su finished speaking, he waved his hand and opened the door of the carriage, avoiding the fate of Leif being Pia on the door panel. When the thick carriage door closed again, silence fell again. Hermione broke the silence again. What were you thinking 6 years ago? At this time, Zhang-Su was watching the 2 armed helicopters in the distant sky through the car window. They had been doing patrol flights around the train. Now there is a mobile phone on the table in the car, and if necessary, you can get in touch with a helicopter directly. He turned to Hermione and said, would you believe me if I said I was thinking about you? Hermione lowered her head. Zhang-Su guessed that she was shy, then Hermione kicked towards Zhang-Su's calf. A scream of meow sounded under the table between the two, and then Crookshanks, who got kicked, jumped out from under the table. After calming down Crookshanks, who had been kicked by him with dried fish, Zhang-Su continued, after all, you are the second Hogwarts student I know, and you don't think you are the one who keeps asking questions? Curious about what's weird. What did you think of me then? Hermione asked. 100,000 reasons. Naturally, Zhang-Su would not answer. At that time, he was probably slapping a set of Edo 48 hands on point in his heart. At this moment, the mobile phone on the table rang. The number 1 egg tart calls for bacon, and the number 1 egg tart calls for bacon. Zhang-Su picked up the table and responded, I received the bacon, please tell me. I received the bacon, please tell me. Egg tart no. Is already on the east side of your side, and they will take over the defense mission next. Zhang-Su came to the window on the right side of the direction of the train, and saw 2 armed helicopters flying with the train in the eastern sky. After thanking the British soldiers for their work, Zhang-Su returned to his seat. At this time Hermione had already left. She greeted Zhang-Su and went to inspect the train, and she came back after an hour. There shouldn't be any problems today, right? Hermione asked worriedly. Many lower grade students, especially the freshmen, seem very nervous. An NBSP, who knows? Zhang-Su said while taking out snacks. Harry gave a speech on Hogsmeade's radio station half an hour before driving this morning. I think the Death Eaters already knew that Harry had not on the train, so they don't need to do the high-risk, low-reward action of attacking the train. Is Malfoy in the car? Hermione continued to ask. Zhang-Su asked others to keep this matter a secret last night, and she didn't find Malfoy's shadow when she was patrolling in the car when driving today. I don't care about him, everything is his own choice anyway. Zhang-Su took out another item from his pocket. It's rare that there are only two of us in the carriage today. How about playing a game? Hermione was obviously very nervous today. Her mouth didn't stop while playing the game. Zhang-Su had to spend some energy to deal with her problems while playing. Zhang-Su yawned when he drew cards from his deck as a starting hand. Hermione, who was manipulating the cards on the opposite side, asked, "Didn't you bring the two sisters paddle back last night? All three of you look like you haven't slept all night." Padma almost fell asleep during the meeting. "What do you want to say?" Zhang-Su asked with black lines. "I was with the three of you last night, and then I didn't sleep all night. Could it be?" Hermione asked gossipingly. "I want to knock your head off, can you?" Zhang-Su said to Hermione angrily while tossing a coin to decide the order of playing cards. "How do you think those train tickets came here this morning? It's not the three of us. Made it without sleep all night." After speaking, Zhang-Su took out "Is this face the enemy?" Hermione immediately cast an iron armor curse on herself. "You wouldn't really take them home, would you?" Hermione asked. "I went out for a walk just now and found that many people knew about it." "When did you become such a gossip?" Zhang-Su continued to say angrily. "You guys, hearing the wind is like rain, and you will be responsible for any deviations in the rumors in the future. Who made your consistent performance make everyone take this kind of thing for granted?" Hermione became the same as those little girls who were gossiping at this time. "Don't think that others can't see what you did, ah." The two chatted about Hogwarts gossip while playing Gwent until the sunset appeared in the sky, and at this time the train also came to the mountains of Scotland. Someone in Hogwarts summed up an experience: "When you follow Zhang-Su, you won't be hungry." After putting away all the cards on the table, Zhang-Su took out 2 boxes of self-heating small hot pots to cushion his stomach first. Just when Hermione was holding a fork and looking at the steaming small hot pot and was about to start, she suddenly saw Zhang-Su's face was tense, and his fingers kept tapping the hand table on the table rhythmically. There was also a sound, which was also a rhythmic knocking sound. Zhang-Su made an agreed gesture to Hermione, and then pointed to the roof of the car. Hermione's face turned black when she saw Zhang-Su's gesture representing entering the combat state. Then Zhang-Su pointed to his nose with his fingers, and drew 2 nostrils that were slender like socket holes. Hermione's face darkened even more now. Then Zhang-Su opened the window at the rear of the car, ready to get out from here and climb onto the roof. Just when Zhang-Su was about to get out, he stopped suddenly, and said to Hermione through voice transmission, "Go to the car in front, wait for my signal, then blow up the connecting part of the car, and leave this car behind. Cut off the carriage." It was very easy for Zhang-Su to get out of the car window and climb to the roof. Zhang-Su, who was standing on the top of the carriage at the rear of the car, saluted Voldemort, who was standing on the other end of the carriage, and then said, "Since His Excellency the Dark Lord is here, why don't you sit in the carriage, and instead want to blow some air here?" Chapter 507. Among the many fellow Voldemorts, this one is probably the sad one. Fighting on the top of the train, position is very important. Generally speaking, many people like to turn their backs to the direction of the front of the car, because it is not an interesting experience to be covered by the wind, especially if sand is blown into the eyes. Short-term discomfort is very likely to lead to the failure of the battle. But for wizards, such problems can be solved through magic, but sometimes when an inexperienced person realizes this problem and casts a spell on himself, it means losing the upper hand. Voldemort obviously took this into consideration, and bullied Zhang-Su to get the upper hand and beat him up. The Dark Lord was reasonable. He beat someone Zhang when he was halfway up the climb. He couldn't do such a low thing. It was just that when Voldemort saw that Zhang-Su quickly got out of the car window and climbed onto the roof of the car without muddling, and he had already prepared the magic to block the wind, he gave up his plan to act first. If Zhang-Su knew what Voldemort was thinking, he would just chuckle. In terms of experience in fighting on trains, Zhang, are not inferior to others in the UK. When I picked up the speeding car to make machine guns, and the one that hit the train blew up the bridge, you hadn't graduated from Hogwarts yet. Voldemort saw that Zhang-Su was ready, so he used to play tricks, I'm just afraid of scaring your little girlfriend. She is not, don't talk nonsense. Zhang Su said to Voldemort with wide eyes, don't think that you are the Dark Lord and you can talk nonsense. Believe it or not, I will sue you for defamation at the Wizengamot. Don't look. You have the Ministry of Magic, and the Wizengamot still has to speak the law. Then I'll just change the law, said Voldemort nonchalantly. You are amazing. Zhang bowed his head to the evil forces. What are you doing here today? Zhang Su continued to delay. The person you are looking for is not on the train. No. Voldemort shook his head and said, I didn't come to see him today, I came to see you. So you're considered a visitor today. Zhang Su laughed and said, I've prepared hot pot in the carriage, why don't we go there and eat hot pot and sing songs, and then we'll deal with the matter. Then you are letting people leave this carriage, sacrificing you alone to hold me, so that other students can leave safely, Voldemort said with a sneer. At the same time, with a wave of the Elder Wand in his hand, a spell hit the junction of the two carriages behind him. I have reinforced the train, Voldemort said to Zhang Su. Zhang Su frowned and asked, Your Excellency seems to be very happy today. If you tell me something happy, I will be happy too. Indeed, I discovered a very interesting thing, Voldemort said while playing with the Elder Wand in his hand. Unexpectedly, you will also be tricked by Dumbledore. Zhang Su frowned even more, thinking that it seemed that Voldemort knew the secret of the Elder Wand's recognition of its master. Seeing the expression on Zhang Su's face, Voldemort thought he was frightened by the news he brought, so he said, Ever since I got the Elder Wand from you, I have found that it is not what I expected. It works so well. Later, Ollivander told me that the Elder Wand probably recognizes its owner. Only when it defeats its previous owner, will it recognize the winner as its new owner. Later, I asked Draco and Severus carefully, and they told me all the details of that night. Only then did I know that Draco became the master of the Elder Wand that night. Later, I questioned Draco carefully, and found that he was beaten up by you. No wonder you were so good that night. So you are the true owner of the Elder Wand. Looking at Voldemort's smiling face, Zhang Su blurted out fuck all the way. Although Voldemort didn't know what Zhang Su meant, he could tell from the shocked expression on Zhang Su's face that this incident hit Zhang Su very hard. Zhang Su was really shocked, because Dumbledore's script still managed to make himself and Voldemort stand on the opposite side of immortality if he hadn't already known the urine property of the Elder Wand and had thrown the blame out early in the morning. Now he could only choose to run away or fight desperately. Zhang Su quickly came back to his senses, pretended to frown and thought for a while, and then said cautiously to Voldemort, Why don't we get out of the carriage and have a hot pot and sing, and then you give me a small magic spell like that will do the trick. I think this is a good place, said Voldemort. Or, you find someone you don't like and give me a small spell like fainting, and then you can choose the Cruciatus curse or the killing curse for him, Zhang Su continued to bargain. Then I'll find a random student on the train, the two girls who went to the hotel with you last night, which one do you think is better? Voldemort asked Zhang Su for advice. Actually, my number one choice is Snape. Zhang Su said seriously. If Voldemort really accepted this suggestion, it is estimated that Snape would put himself in the face of the photo album he sent. He's useful now, Voldemort replied. However, for the sake of our happy cooperation in the past, I can give you a chance to survive. Voldemort continued, I promise not to use the Avada Kedavra curse. Zhang Su looked at the speeding train, and estimated that he would have a high chance of falling to his death on the spot after falling unconscious back then. He often used spells to knock down the devil soldiers who were lying on the roof of the car and shot to death. At this time, Zhang Su felt that he still needed to delay a little longer, so he continued, Then how about another day? I'm not feeling well right now, I hope I can ask for sick leave. Don't take my kindness as something you deserve for granted. Voldemort said impatiently, It is the greatest favor I can bestow on you by letting you clearly go on the road. Of course you can escape, I believe I can't stop you. But how many students on the train will reach Hogwarts safely by then? I can't guarantee it. Seeing that the other party threatened him with the safety of a carload of students, Zhang Su couldn't do anything about it. But now his purpose of delaying time has been achieved. Okay, let's start. Zhang Su raised his wand. At the same time, Voldemort's Elder Wand waved. When the train passed through the tunnel, Zhang Su had turned over and lay on the roof of the car. Looking up, there was no one else on the roof except him. He checked both sides of the carriage again, and found no Voldemort hanging on the carriage. When Zhang Su had just climbed onto the roof, he saw this tunnel on the mountainside railway in the distance in the sunset, so he tried to see if he could trap Voldemort. When the train entered the tunnel just now, Voldemort, who had his back to the direction of the train, focused all his attention on Zhang Su, but he didn't notice that the entrance of the tunnel was getting closer and closer to him. Then, Zhang Su heard a bang while avoiding with the iron bridge, and the sound behind him could not be heard because the noise of the train in the tunnel was too loud. It seemed that something heavy fell on his feet. Look! For the first time in his life, Zhang Su prayed to the gods and Buddhas all over the sky, hoping that Voldemort would be killed just like that. Chapter 508 Arriving safely at school. Zhang Su stepped on the flying sword and left the train. When he arrived at the entrance of the tunnel, he did not find Voldemort's body. He only found some blood and skin remnants at the top of the tunnel entrance, and some blood stains were found on the fallen grass beside the railway. So Zhang Su happily packed all the precious materials that fell from Voldemort's body into special containers. Even the withered grass stained with a drop of blood was not spared. After beating the boss and picking up the materials, Zhang Su rushed back to the train's prefect compartment, and his small hot pot was still warm. When Hermione received the news and returned to the carriage, Zhang Su had just finished eating a box of hot pot. Then he pointed to another box on the table and said to Hermione, "This box is for you, eat it while it's hot. It's getting cold." Hermione suddenly rushed towards Zhang Su, hugged him, and said in a trembling voice, "It's fine, it's fine." Not long after, the door of the carriage was pushed open, Ron walked in, and Hermione jumped aside in a hurry. Ron ignored the scene he saw just now, but walked up to Zhang Su, patted and touched his body, and asked with concern, "Is there any injury? Is there any pain?" "Stop." Zhang Su grabbed Ron's hand. "If you touch it again, be careful. I'll give you medicine and I'll touch you enough. And I haven't settled with you for last night." Ron shrank his neck, then ran aside with a smirk. Next in the carriage were Ginny and Luna. After Ginny gave Zhang Su a hug, she gave up the seat to Luna, and then Luna hugged Zhang Su and cried. The bewildered Zhang Su managed to comfort Luna and let her sit on a chair beside her. Next, more and more acquaintances came to the carriage, or gave Zhang Su a warm hug, or held his hand and said a lot of words of thanks. The climax came from the Paddle sisters. They came in front of Zhang Su, and then kissed both cheeks of the bewildered Zhang Su at the same time amidst the booing of a group of people. 2 kitchen knives suddenly appeared in Zhang Su's mind, and then exploded into countless lights like explosive seeds. After driving away the idlers on the grounds that the train might be attacked again, Zhang Su asked Hermione, who was sitting beside him, "What's going on?" "Your conversation with the mysterious man can be heard throughout the train," Hermione said after wiping her eyes. "What?" Zhang Su's eyes widened in fright. "Some words just now, such as the matter of the Elder Wand, and Voldemort mentioned their previous cooperation. These contents can easily be used by those who are interested in making fuss." Mr. Zhang had already thought of the way a certain black dog barked at him after knowing these things, and he was considering whether to ask his friend in the embassy to help him buy a bottle of isoniazid for later use. After the train entered the tunnel, "Your talking stopped," Hermione continued. "We were very worried at the time. Not long after the train came out of the tunnel, someone climbed on the roof and found that you were all gone." Zhang Su estimated the time. Others must not be as proficient in climbing the train as he was. In addition to the time they discussed in advance, he was already picking up materials at the tunnel entrance when he reached the roof of the train. "Everyone says you left you know who on the other side of the tunnel. You haven't come back after a while. Everyone is worried." Zhang Su wanted to get the actual meaning of this implicit worry is broken as you were killed by Voldemort. After Hermione finished speaking, Luna, who had been sitting next to Zhang Su and hugged his arm tightly, kept nodding. Zhang Su cast a head touch kill on Luna. Luna's mood turned stable. "Why did the mysterious man leave?" Hermione asked curiously. "I hid while the train was passing through the tunnel," Zhang Su said vaguely. "Voldemort hid his head on a rock. It's better not to reveal it for the time being. If he becomes angry, he will be in big trouble." Next, the train arrived at Hogsmeade railway station safely. Before arriving at the station, Zhang Su took the time to call Fu Rong with his mobile phone to report his safety, and by the way, he reported all his activities in the past 2 days in detail, especially the rescue of Sister Paddle. "I've also heard from Mrs. Maxim about Sister Paddle," Fu Rong said on the other end of the phone. "It's good that people are rescued. If the 2 of them are willing, bring them back. The old man entrusted me to help. If you bring a word, They can provide shelter to the two sisters. When did my brother say that? Zhang Su's heart was agitated. He felt that Mr. Zhao was about to make a big deal. This afternoon. Fu Rong said. He called me and said, "Let me tell you the news when you call back." After half a minute, Fu Rong found that there was no response on the other side of the phone, and hurriedly asked, "What's the matter?" Still. Zhang Su replied, "I just thought of something suddenly, but I haven't grasped the point. You can help me talk to my brother tomorrow, because they are my classmates. Don't set the asylum conditions too high. My heart hurts." Fu Rong asked with a smile, "Twin sisters, let's spend it. Are you heartbroken? Stop making trouble. How can you say that they are both poor homeless people?" Zhang Su said, "Do you think I'm the kind of guy who takes advantage of others' danger?" A cold voice came from the other end of the phone, like the metallic sound of two hatchets colliding. Since it was already late at night in China, Zhang Su drove Fu Rong to bed after chatting for a few words. After hanging up the phone and putting the phone into the protective box, Zhang Su asked Hermione, who had a superb memory, "Hermione, have you heard Parvati talk about the situation of the Paddle family?" When he usually chatted with Padma, he didn't talk about this aspect, and the two of them were busy studying various magic. Hermione thought for a moment and said, "Parvati seldom told us about the family situation. She only mentioned that their family is in a place called Rajasthan in western India." By the way, Zhang Su suddenly realized, it's Rajasthan. Yes, that's the name. Hermione asked curiously, "What's wrong there?" Zhang Su shook his head and said, "This incident is too deep, so just pretend it never happened." It was impossible for him to tell Hermione that next year, in 1998, a big event that would shake the world would happen in Rajasthan, India. Moreover, the depth of this matter is not something a small shrimp like him can participate in. After the train arrived at the station, Zhang Su opened the door and found that the people who greeted him were of high standard. After asking Hermione to take Luna away, Zhang Su followed the stern-faced Professor McGonagall, Lupin, Moody, Scrimgeour and old Mr. Rodney into the last carriage pulled by Thestrals. On the carriage, Zhang Su briefly described how he fought Voldemort on the road, and the five of them were bewildered, and then they shouted regretfully. After finishing this topic, Scrimgeour asked, "Mr. Zhang, is the news that the Death Eaters will attack Hogwarts tonight accurate?" Zhang Su nodded solemnly, and said, "That insider should be trustworthy, and his status is enough to obtain such information. And the actions of the mysterious person today have confirmed the accuracy of this piece of information from the side. First of all, he came here by himself and did not lead the Death Eaters, which means that other Death Eaters have more important tasks. Secondly, he must make sure to defeat me before the operation begins and become the master of the Elder Wand. Otherwise, if I am defeated in their operation, and the scene will be so chaotic, it may be difficult to find the Elder Wand after me. Successor. But why do you suggest that we make only limited preparations?" Scrimgeour asked again. "This is to protect the inside line and prevent it from being exposed." Zhang Su replied. "Voldemort is not a fool. If he finds that his actions have been arranged in advance to countermeasures, he will think that there is a ghost under his command. The other people in the carriage might not care about the insider's life or death. After all, the insider is not theirs, but it is impossible for Zhang Su not to think about the line in his hand. There are still battles to be fought in the future, and it is impossible to lose easily now." Then it was time for the bosses to discuss, and Zhang Su didn't want to participate in it. When the carriage stopped in front of the gate of Hogwarts, the bosses had already worked out a plan of action that would make Zhang Su's teeth ache. After seeing off the bosses, Zhang Su walked towards Hogwarts Castle surrounded by a large group of students. When they entered the castle gate and came to the foyer, they saw Harry Potter coming down the stairs. Zhang Su smacked his lips, and said to Harry, "It's a pity, I knew I would have brought a bottle with a larger size." Then a group of people discouraged Harry from putting away his wand, and waited until everyone had finished eating. Chapter 509 The Last School Opening Banquet. Michael Owen, who followed Hagrid to complete the revisiting the school building and revisiting the history of revolution, was, % excited, % nervous and, % uneasy, and got out of the tunnel with the students he had just met on the train, and then suddenly saw a brightly lit castle appearing in front of him. "This is Hogwarts Castle." Hagrid pointed to the castle while leading the freshmen forward, and introduced them. "Everyone will spend 7 years here together." "Professor Hagrid, is that the basilisk?" Michael asked, pointing to the eerie basilisk fountain in front of the castle under the dark red light. That's right. Hagrid replied. At that time, the students at that time spent a lot of effort in order to deal with this big guy. Hagrid noticed that many curious students started to walk towards the fountain. He hurriedly shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, you can come back during the break, otherwise you will miss the sorting ceremony." When Hagrid knocked on the castle gate, the heavy gate opened, but everyone found no one behind it. If Professor Flitwick hadn't let everyone find himself in time with a cough, he might have been trampled to the ground by the students rushing into the castle. In the small room waiting for the sorting ceremony to start, several young wizards from ordinary people asked Michael, "Michael, do you know what the sorting ceremony is like?" Because Zhang Su told Michael a lot of things about Hogwarts before, and when he was on the train, he kept showing off this little knowledge to a few friends in the carriage who were also ordinary people. Everyone asked him about the sorting ceremony. But Michael turned into a bitter face at this time. He said, "The content of the sorting ceremony is different every year. This year we should use magic to cook." The friends around were all dumbfounded. Degree dividing line W. No, okay, Michael, don't be angry. After all, it's a Hogwarts tradition to keep the sorting ceremony a secret from the freshmen. Eat more dinner later, you first-year freshmen haven't had time to eat supper yet. After the sorting ceremony was over, Zhang Su smiled and said to Michael, who was sitting next to him, who was a little sullen. This position originally belonged to his aunt, but now that the position became vacant after his aunt graduated, he called Michael, who was assigned to the Eagle Academy, to come over. At this time, Professor McGonagall was giving her first headmaster's speech. "Now, we must deploy according to the most severe situation and make the most adequate defense preparations. In the next work, we must first strengthen our ideological understanding. All colleges must deeply practice the concept of not afraid of mobilizing teachers, not afraid of laboring people and money, and not afraid of 10 defenses." The professors and prefects grasped in place, resolutely overcome paralyzed thoughts, tighten the string of absolute safety, and minimize the influence of Death Eaters on Hogwarts. Secondly, we need to implement work measures. We must strictly abide by the bottom line of safety, comprehensively investigate various safety hazards, and focus on doing a good job in the castle's peripheral defense system, the transfer of low-grade students during wartime, and daily inspections and inspections. The third is to improve the response time under the current complex and dangerous situation. The students did not feel that Professor McGonagall's speech was long and windy, but listened intently. If anyone hear disadvantages, start to cut off the screen, knock on the baldness, push the twisted gorge, and forgive the BR. Under the current circumstances, the students who still choose to stay at Hogwarts know what kind of situation they will face next. Professor McGonagall's speech was quickly over, and then it was time to introduce the new team of Hogwarts professors. After Professor McGonagall becomes the principal, the vice principal needs to choose one of the 4 deans. Slughorn of the Snake Academy is older than Professor McGonagall. Professor Sprout of the Badger Academy is not interested in this position, and Lupin, the new dean of the Lion Academy, is not qualified enough, so Professor Flitwick of the Eagle Academy became appointed a new vice principal. When Professor McGonagall announced that Lupin was back as defense against the dark arts professor, the students who had taken his class erupted in cheers. When it was announced that Black would take over as the professor of transfiguration, many senior students laughed happily. Some of the students who saw him almost become a hot pot were still in Hogwarts. In the end, it was the appointment of Mr. Zhang, who stunned the new students and cheered the old students, to come back out of the arena. Michael wanted to congratulate Professor Zhang next to him, but when he saw that Professor Zhang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, he asked cautiously, "Are you unhappy because of this appointment, Mr. Zhang?" "You can just call me Zhang." Zhang Su said, "You have to know that changing homework for someone is a very hard job." At this time, dinner appeared on the long table. Zhang Su quickly filled a plate full of meat for himself, then took 2 cups of pumpkin juice, and handed one of them to Luna. Michael originally wanted to ask Zhang Su about Hogwarts, but when he saw Zhang Su was in trouble there, he found that he couldn't get in the conversation. After chatting with the freshman classmates sitting on the other side for a while, Michael suddenly found that the atmosphere in the cafeteria gradually became strange. First, when he was taking a lamb chop, he saw a senior sitting diagonally across from him holding something and looking at it. Then the senior raised his head and looked at Zhang Su, who was sweeping the steak, and then also followed to speed up the speed of eating. Immediately afterwards, the prefect whispered a few words to the classmates sitting beside him. The classmate was taken aback when he heard this, and finally speeded up his meal. This scene continued to play out in the cafeteria, and the students seating in the cafeteria felt as if they had fast-forwarded. Taking advantage of the opportunity that Zhang Su was drinking pumpkin juice after eating a piece of grilled ribs, Michael, who intuitively told himself that something was wrong, asked, "What happened?" "Just eat as much as you want, and you must follow the instructions later," Zhang Su said to Michael. Just as Michael was about to ask again, he found that Zhang Su had already turned his head to the other side, talking to the girl sitting next to him. At this moment, a patron saint exuding silver-white light suddenly ran to Professor McGonagall. The next moment, Professor McGonagall put down the tableware in his hand, and the dinner on the long table in front of the students suddenly disappeared at the same time. All the students from the 1st to 4th grades returned to the common room of their respective colleges, and the first-year students follow the prefect. Professor McGonagall ordered after standing up from his seat. And Zhang Su left the cafeteria with the evacuated students, and then came to the roof of the astronomy tower alone. Chapter 510 Su Voldemort Zhang. Taking Hogwarts was an extremely important goal for Voldemort. Needless to say, Harry Potter, who wanted to get rid of him quickly, the Order of the Phoenix, who had always been against him, his professor, who was unwilling to obey him, and Zhang, who did more harm than good. Needless to say that Hogsmeade's flank was protected here. The vast Forbidden Forest under its influence, and its status in the hearts of wizards in Britain and even in Europe, the students inside alone have a great effect. Kidnapping hostages and threatening family members is a common method used by Voldemort. If he can control the students in the school, unless the entire British Magical Society dares to sacrifice a generation to fight Voldemort, the parents of the students can only be at the mercy of Voldemort. For the success of tonight's operation, Voldemort's gang made careful planning before the operation. First, more than half of the Death Eaters launched a surprise attack on Hogsmeade. The Aurors, who had been prepared and were ready to set off to help Hogwarts at any time, were caught off guard by the sudden attack. For a while, Scrimgeour wasn't sure whether the Death Eaters were attacking Hogwarts or Hogsmeade. Fortunately, the Aurors and government soldiers were ready for battle early in the morning. After a short period of confusion, they immediately went into the battle to protect Hogsmeade. Only in this way, the strength of the Ministry of Magic to support Hogwarts is greatly weakened. More than 20 minutes after the Battle of Hogsmeade, the Death Eaters' attack on Hogwarts began. Countless wizards suddenly appeared in front of the gate of Hogwarts in the dark night, and then, with the poisonous spores sprayed by the big puff mushroom through the gap in the gate, as well as the ice watermelon and corn butter falling from the sky, cracked the gate in defensive magic on the fence. There was no moon in the night sky today, and when the lights outside Hogwarts Castle were turned off, the surroundings were plunged into pitch darkness. Zhang Su stood on the roof of the astronomy tower, holding a telescope to carefully observe the Death Eaters, who showed their true colors under the flares in front of the gate. "Just at the position just now, let's keep firing a few flares in a row." Zhang Su gave an order to Zybe, the seeker of the Badger Court Quidditch team, who came to help. Shabby fiddled with the 81 diameter round tube that looked like a mortar in front of him, but it was actually a mortar, but it was printed with firework launcher on it. Soon after, there was a bang, and a homemade flares flew into the air. Zhang Su borrowed this thing from the government army a few days ago. The reason was to use it to launch flares, signal flares and the like anyway, as long as the cannon is not fired. Finally, under the guarantee of Professor McGonagall, the government army sent a repainted L16 81mm mortar. Zhang Su originally wanted to borrow a couple of sticks to play with, but was rejected. The Death Eaters on the ground tried to use spells to send down the flares in the air, but the flares flew too high for the spells to reach. In the next 2 minutes, Zhang Su found that Snape, who was behind the Death Eaters, was looking in the direction of the Forbidden Forest nearly, % of the time. A flash of light flashed in Zhang Su's mind, and he immediately turned the binoculars to the direction of the Forbidden Forest. Under the faint starlight, the Forbidden Forest stood there quietly like a black reef. "Zybe, you continue to observe here," Zhang Su said while preparing the flying props. "Talk to Harry. I'll go to the Forbidden Forest to have a look. It seems strange that the Forbidden Forest is too quiet." However, the deadly dagger in Voldemort's hands tonight was a band of elite Death Eaters speeding through the Forbidden Forest. Voldemort and his gang were attacking east and west, in order to attract the attention of the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts to the front, so that this surprise attack force could enter Hogwarts from the direction of the Forbidden Forest, and then take advantage of the chaos of Hogwarts on the occasion. He cooperated with the Death Eaters who were attacking from the front. After flying out of the interference range of Hogwarts, Zhang Su used his night vision goggles to quickly find out that the team in the woods had circled a large circle in the Forbidden Forest to avoid the patrolling territory of the Centaur tribe. Dead Apostles. After reporting the enemy's situation, Zhang Su felt that he should stop this team of more than 20 Death Eaters. Mr. Zhang thought he couldn't stand up to this group of people, so he chose to become Voldemort. Relying on his familiarity with the terrain, Zhang Su landed on the edge of a stream that the Death Eaters must pass through. After making some preparations, he put on the auspicious suit and the invisibility cloak, and took out another one that applied a bunch of the Type 95 squad machine gun, which was cursed with a silencer curse and the darkness curse, was fitted with a low light scope and lay under a big tree thicker than 3 Hogwarts. It's not that Zhang doesn't want to use a sniper rifle, but his shooting skills are too anxious. He wants to hit the hostage anyway, so it's better to use a light machine gun that is easier to carry, and can suddenly fire a few more shots if necessary. A little bit of starlight can't provide much help to the Death Eaters in the Forbidden Forest. They can only rely on the candles in the hands of glory to illuminate their way forward. In this case, they must set a number of road signs in advance, and then follow the road signs to determine whether they are going the wrong way. Obviously, a stream in the Forbidden Forest is the most ideal signpost, and there is almost no possibility of going the wrong way along the stream. Down the stream there is a ditch that leads the water to the Hogwarts greenhouses, so just follow that and you'll reach the greenhouses, where the sheds will no doubt provide good cover for intruders. Of course, the premise is that they have passed the trap set by Professor Sprout around the greenhouse to prevent the students from stealing vegetables. However, being able to keep the enemy out of the country is naturally the best choice. After all, the current Death Eaters will turn into zombies when they die. So after Zhang Su aimed the reticle in the sight at the leading Death Eater, he calmly pulled the trigger. There was no sound of bullets being fired, no muzzle flash, and even bullet casings popping out and falling to the ground were silent. The only thing that could prove that the bullet had been fired, apart from the recoil felt on Zhang Su's shoulder, was the Death Eater who suddenly fell to the ground. When the lead Death Eater suddenly staggered and fell to the ground, the others thought he had tripped over a tree root. It's just that the smell of blood that followed immediately alerted the others. After one of them said a word, the Death Eaters immediately spread out and formed a security circle, and then several Death Eaters raised their hands of glory to surround them, and one of them carefully removed the food lying on the ground. The dead apostle's body turned over. At this moment, Zhang Su picked up a controller beside him and pressed it, and 3 explosions of the sights facing the enemy came from the front. Chapter 511. There is a species of white mice called Death Eaters. After Hogwarts received the report from Zhang Su about Death Eaters appearing in the Forbidden Forest, it immediately attracted the attention of relevant leaders. After identifying the goal of this team of Death Eaters, Moody personally took Lupin, Black and Ryan and a group of elite members of the Order of the Phoenix, professors and students went to the Forbidden Forest to support Zhang Su. Oh, it's just that when they arrived, they didn't see the ongoing battle. What they saw was someone Zhang who was sitting and sighing, leaning against a big tree 4 or 5 higgs thick, and the smell of gunpowder smoke and blood lingers in the air. Where are the Death Eaters? Are you hurt? When Moody and the others saw Zhang Su, they hurriedly surrounded him and asked in a hurry. For the first question, Zhang Su just pointed to a place not far away. As for the second question, apart from getting kicked in the butt, he hasn't been attacked just now. According to Zhang Su's original plan, he would incarnate as Voldemort, shoot a shot to change places, rely on preset traps and harassment tactics to delay the Death Eater's progress, or wipe out the opponent's vital forces piecemeal. The beginning was exactly as he had expected. When the team of Death Eaters walked into the trap he had set up, he eliminated one of them first, causing the other Death Eaters to stop and gather near the trap. Finally, 3 equal-sided bombs exploded. This side faces the enemy arranged by the vertices of the triangle. As a result, this was in line with expectations, although after the first Death Eater fell, the other Death Eaters immediately cast various defensive spells such as the Iron Armor Curse on themselves. However, under the bombardment of countless steel balls, 2 Death Eaters turned into a hornet's nest, and many Death Eaters were injured to varying degrees. After a short period of confusion, the Death Eaters knew that their actions had been exposed, so various lighting spells and revealing spells kept firing around, vowing to find traces of the attackers. If Zhang Su got close to them, the illusion spell and invisibility cloak on his body would be invalid under their revealing spell, so he could only hide himself with the auspicious suit on his body. But unless he got kicked in the head by a centaur, He wouldn't go near a Death Eater when he had a weapon range advantage. According to Zhang Su's plan, when the Death Eaters failed to find the enemy and were about to leave, they would make another shuttle. After killing or injuring 1 or 2 Death Eaters, they would immediately move and change positions. At this moment, he was already ready to deal with these Death Eaters in the Forbidden Forest, and was even ready to change his name to Zhang Zhaoxuan. However, just when Zhang Su had just aimed at the target, a series of curses were poured on the group of Death Eaters from the surrounding woods like rain brought by mangosteen. In just half a minute, neither the Death Eaters nor Zhang Su had time to react, and all the Death Eaters laid down. Not long after, a group of people came out from behind the trees looking through the scope. Zhang Su with a face of fucking found many acquaintances: Miss Tonya Adams, Comrade Yuri, the distant cousin of the Delacour family who was an Auror in the French Ministry of Magic, the German Auror Klinsmann who met after the German hijacking incident, and a small wizard with white hair and red eyes. Immediately afterwards, someone kicked Zhang Su's ass, and then he saw several people wearing vests with the words "Approaching Science" printed on the back running from him to the place where the Death Eaters fell to the ground. When Zhang Su put away his disguise and walked over, he saw a group of people had dispersed to form a security circle, and several people wearing masks and gloves were taking samples from the Death Eaters who fell on the ground. Zhang Su recognized another acquaintance, so he walked up to a middle-aged man wearing a vest of Entering Science. "Uncle Simon, what are you doing?" Zhang Su asked. 2 years ago, Zhang Su was bitten by a zombie. Later, when walking into Science was finishing the matter, it was this Zementini who was in charge of docking with Zhang Su. Zementini looked at Zhang Su with a half-smile, and said, "Sorry, I accidentally stepped on something just now." Zhang Su would not fall into his trap of "is it a thing," pointing to the staff of Approaching Science who was drawing blood from a stunned Death Eater behind him, and said, "You are here to collect specimens." Zementini nodded. Zhang Su can know some things. After all, there are a large number of infectious zombies in the UK. We have to prepare for the worst, so we came to collect information. Zementini replied. Then these people. Zhang Su pointed to the multinational troops around him, and at the same time greeted the people he knew. Other countries are also worried. If there is a sudden outbreak without preparation, no one can bear it, so the United States, Russia, France, Germany and Italy have all sent people here. Zementini said, 2 days ago we went here to prepare, but we didn't expect that we would run into each other after the ambush of the first team at dusk, so after discussing it, we temporarily joined forces. The purpose is the same anyway. Although Zementini didn't explain in detail, Zhang Su still figured out the purpose of this group of people. Traces of the large-scale use of biological weapons have been found in a certain place, and some countries naturally want to find out what happened there and assess whether it will cause harm to their own country. It is estimated that the request of various countries to obtain virus samples from the British Ministry of Magic was rejected or there was no feedback. After all, the Ministry of Magic has been busy recently, so everyone simply came to collect it by themselves. Because the virus samples are obtained earlier and the mechanism is clarified, we can come up with a treatment or prevention plan in case of a large-scale outbreak of the virus. As for using it to study it by yourself, and then modify it or something, then it can't be said. As for biological and chemical weapons, it is good that everyone knows it well, and if it is put on the surface, everyone should not say anything about it. Zhang Su is not interested in this kind of thing that does not take British sovereignty seriously, but has discovered another message in Zementini's words just now. You said that you found more than this team of Death Eaters in the Forbidden Forest. Zhang Su asked, frowning. Yes, we found several teams. Zementini replied, but because we have a large number of people, the more samples we need, the better, so one team is not enough, so we will take this opportunity to get more samples. This team is the last team we found. I didn't expect you to attack first. Now Zhang Su was completely speechless. This group of people didn't treat Death Eaters as human beings. If their behavior is exposed, there will definitely be a disturbance in public opinion. Zhang Su, who was originally prepared for a tough battle, felt that this thunderous and rainy battle in the Forbidden Forest tonight would be more difficult after he learned that the teams of Death Eaters interspersed in the Forbidden Forest had all become the sample pool for this group of people. Let him feel a little unsatisfied, just like an empty nester born in the, after watching the video of Mangosteen blowing down tower cranes and elevators in the circle of friends, he was so nervous that he arranged for the workers to evacuate the prefabricated houses and transfer them to a nearby school overnight to avoid the typhoon. In the second day, there was only a little wind and a little rain. Except for a little more water in the basement, there was nothing wrong with the construction site. So after Zhang Su learned about the situation, he went to fish under the tree in the distance, because he kept away from the scene where those medical freaks exchanged and discussed while taking samples. Later, he will help this group of guys who kill but don't bury clean up their hands, and burn the rest of the corpses before the corpse turns into corpse. Chapter 512 The Battle of Hogwarts 1. When the reinforcements went to the scene to watch, many students vomited in a mess on the spot, and Lu Ping and the others also looked bitter. It wasn't that the corpses of the Death Eaters at the scene were too tragic, but it was the first time they saw some incomplete corpses and smelled the smell of blood in the air. In this case, the visual senses are fine, but when the olfactory senses are added, the stimulation becomes greater. Moody was the most calm among the people who came. He has seen a lot of arresting black wizards for so many years, and he has seen even worse ones. And he soon discovered strange things in these corpses, such as traces of various spells that were not commonly used by British wizards. After noticing Moody's strange eyes, Zhang Su told him briefly about the Death Eaters being divided up by multinational forces just now. After recording the corpses of the Death Eaters, who could still be seen clearly, and taking away their wands, a fire turned them to ashes and ashes. After the incident in the Forbidden Forest came to an end, Moody led his men back to defend Hogwarts, while Zhang Su volunteered to patrol in the direction of the Forbidden Forest. It is said to be patrolling, but it is actually fishing. Today should be the day when Savior Harry Potter performed on the Hogwarts stage, and Zhang Su didn't intend to steal his limelight as long as he took care of the affairs in the Forbidden Forest. It was better to leave the frontal battlefield to Harry. Although the defense of Hogwarts seems a bit child's play now, its lethality is still very impressive. Due to the presence of Snape, the thug, the gate of Hogwarts was quickly blasted open. In the cafeteria, the wall behind the professor's seat was replaced with a curtain that is usually used when playing movies, showing a condescending picture of looking at the gate. And in front of the professor's chair, there is now a huge Hogwarts sand table. Harry, Professor McGonagall and other members of the command stood beside the sand table, watching intently the every move of the Death Eaters on the screen. "Neville, are you okay near the gate?" Harry asked Neville, who was standing not far from him, after seeing the Death Eaters rushing through the gate. "Everything is under control," Neville replied confidently. Neville's confidence is not without source, because now Hogwarts' first line of defense is the one he has put a lot of effort into, and he knows the power of this line of defense better than anyone else. When the Death Eaters opened the door, they were met with counterattacks from within the walls. Countless black shadows in the sky fell into the sky like raindrops, and then crashed into the crowd. The huge and hard frozen ice watermelon fell on the unprepared Death Eaters, and many unprepared Death Eaters were smashed to the point of bleeding, tendons and bones. Some fast-reacting Death Eaters immediately put the Iron Armor Curse on themselves, but although the Iron Armor Curse prevented them from being injured, it couldn't stop the law of conservation of momentum, and many Death Eaters were knocked to the ground by the ice watermelon. When these ice watermelons hit people or the ground, they exploded immediately, and the cold air gushing out from inside froze the people around them. Along with the iced watermelon, gooey chunks of corn butter rained down from the sky. These butters are not very lethal to Death Eaters, but sticking to them is very uncomfortable. The Death Eater who got a piece of butter on his head and face had to stop what he was doing and clean up the butter on his face first, while the butter on his clothes would be done later when he was free. The Death Eaters who were in charge of breaking the door finally broke the curse after being covered in spores by the big puff mushroom behind the door. However, many of them were poisoned and fell down before they could be happy. Seeing that the gate was blown open, the Death Eaters who had been waiting for a long time entered the campus immediately at the same time. They did not forget to put a defensive spell such as the Iron Armor Curse on themselves. Although it could not prevent the corn butter from being smeared on their bodies, the ice watermelon's damage to them was greatly reduced, and they could only freeze them slightly. The Death Eaters who rushed into the campus failed to take 2 steps, and fires ignited on both sides with a boom. Immediately afterwards, flaming fireballs shot out from behind the burning stumps, and the crossfire formed by the fireballs immediately knocked the Death Eaters who had just rushed in. Worst of all were those Death Eaters who still had corn butter on them, and the sparks from the burning peas fell on them, and the butter burned instantly. Although there is magic that can make wizards not afraid of ordinary flames, the flames on these peas are obviously not ordinary. Many Death Eaters turned into torches before they could react. In less than 2 minutes, the first batch of Death Eaters who rushed into the campus were kicked out. In the cafeteria, Neville looked triumphantly at the classmates and professors who were so shocked by the scene in front of them that they couldn't speak. Harry and the others were a little flustered now, because although they had seen the power of immature plants last semester, no one could have imagined that mature plants would have such great power, and many of them often sit on the edge of the flower bed where these plants are planted and talk about love. But in any case, easily repelling the first attack of the Death Eaters was something worth celebrating. Facing the cheering students, Neville remained calm. This is actually just the first line of defense, and it's not difficult for the Death Eaters to break through after they're prepared. Neville said to Harry and Professor McGonagall. If the Death Eaters are well prepared for the next attack, then it's only a matter of time before this line of defense is breached. So what can I do? Harry asked worriedly. There is a method that can kill Death Eaters on a large scale, but the plants will suffer a lot of damage after using it, so this method can only be used at the last moment. Neville replied confidently, but I improved the mushroom setup so that this method can be used outside the school walls. After hearing Neville's detailed arrangement, Harry rested his chin in one hand, thought for a while and then made up his mind and said, I think this method can be used, and if this method is successful, we can take the opportunity to launch a counterattack. Professor McGonagall was not good at commanding battles, she just thought Harry's plan sounded reasonable, so she approved his plan. Outside the gates of Hogwarts, Snape listened to the report of the Death Eaters, who just ran out of the campus with a cold face. No expression could be seen on his cold face. At this moment, his heart is also a group of alpacas doing pole vaulting. He knows that the newly planted plants in Hogwarts have a defensive effect, but he never thought that their power should not be underestimated. However, he soon discovered some shortcomings of these plants. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513, The Battle of Hogwarts, 2. In the high sky of Hogwarts, Zhang Su, who had finished fishing in the Forbidden Forest, was sitting horizontally on his long-lost vector propulsion broom, crossing his legs and drinking the fat house-happy water, looking at the people who were doing their own things below. Hogwarts students and Death Eaters preparing for the second battle. This is beyond the scope of Hogwarts defensive magic, so don't worry about being discovered. It's not good for you to be lazy here now. Following these words, came the faint smell of alcohol in the night wind. It doesn't matter, I believe in my classmates. Without me, they performed just as well. Zhang Su said to Yuri, who was playing with a flying sword he borrowed from him not far away. Around the two of them, there was a group of onlookers floating impressively. Just now Zhang Su was dealing with the corpses of Death Eaters in the Forbidden Forest while fishing, and then encountered the multinational troops who were waiting for the corpses of several Death Eaters to turn into zombies. After chatting for a few words, the team leaders of the multinational forces asked Zhang Su to borrow flying props to watch the defense of Hogwarts from a high altitude. Actually, you are afraid. A voice as cold as the night wind sounded beside Zhang Su. If you are afraid, admit it, we can understand. Zhang Su didn't want to pay attention to this little guy who was familiar with him, and then forcibly jumped on his broom, and now he was standing on the end of the broom with a cup of coffee that came out of nowhere. From the moment they met, the other party had always looked at him as disliked, so he gave the other party a look of he. He didn't know when he offended the Italian. If it wasn't for being idle and the other party seemed to be familiar with him, he would control the tail of the broom to tilt down by 45 degrees and let the Italian dwarf play with it once. The body is in free fall. By the way, the crowd of onlookers has collectively entered the mode of eating and drinking while watching the show. Hey, those students are starting to fly. Nangguang, who had been paying attention to the situation on the ground, shouted. Some of them are still carrying things. Mrs. Adams also noticed the students who took off on broomsticks from the Hogwarts greenhouse area. The leader is Ron. Anne Adams discovered her nephew immediately. Everyone has cast the magic for looking into the distance, so they can see clearly what is happening in the distance. Zhang Su saw that the students taking off were divided into two parts. The part of the students who didn't carry anything on their backs formed a laughable circle in the air, and climbed up while circling the circle. The students with their backs formed a dense formation, staying within the protection range of the laughable circle. Yes, the division of labor is clear and orderly. They learned very well, and I have taught them for so many years. Tisk well, This is a conversation between two people on a broomstick. At this moment, the Death Eaters also started their second attack. Most of the plants in the flower garden have a big disadvantage, that is, the skin is fragile and the blood is little. If you are approached by the enemy under fire, you will be easily injured. Now the Death Eaters used transfiguration to conjure up a group of clay figures and stone figures to take the lead, barely blocking the burning peas shooting from both sides. The Death Eaters, who followed behind, got cover and began to use spells such as expulsion spells to disperse the ice, watermelon and corn butter that fell from the sky. At the end, after the defensive measures were taken, the casualties of the Death Eaters plummeted. As long as they make up for the damaged clay figures or stone figures in time and block the attacks from the air, they can move forward unscathed. The first line of defense has been breached. The spectators in the night sky commented. It can be clearly seen from the air that the burning stumps at the front were pushed down or extinguished by magic, such as the Clear Spring Curse, and then the peas behind were burned or chopped down. It doesn't matter, the first line of defense is just to buy time. Zhang Su said, we still have to fight. And they are planning to make a big move. Zhang Su finished speaking and pointed to the students who were flying to the sky non-stop. It wasn't long before the students who made up Laverberry's circle spotted the crowd in the night sky. When Ron rushed over aggressively with his men, he was stunned on the spot after seeing his aunt, who was telling others, the red-haired guy in front is my nephew. Go ahead and leave us alone, Aunt Adams said to Ron, waving her hand. At this time, Zhang Su had already hidden behind the others. Originally, he had promised to go on patrol in the Forbidden Forest. If someone found him fishing here, it would have a bad effect. After Ron figured out that the Melon Eaters were harmless and contacted Professor McGonagall, he left with the others. Regardless of the cynicism of the little man next to the broom, Zhang continued to observe the battle situation below. The Death Eaters who broke into the campus now were just as dazed as Ron was just now, and now stood nuts at least 10 feet high in front of them, and these tall nuts were lined up into a wall. The fists and feet of the clay men and stone men hit that wall, leaving only a shallow trace under the magical attack of the Death Eaters. Only a shallow pit was left on their bodies. At this time, Zhang Su was also a little confused, because there were only a few tall nuts here before, and I don't know when this wall came out. If Zhang Su asked Neville and the others, they would answer with a straight face, of course I asked Hagrid's brother to help, and asked him to move the nuts planted in the greenhouse area and put them away. It can't be done in a matter of minutes. Because of Hagrid's relationship, Zhang Su has always ignored the fact that there is still a giant at Hogwarts. The Death Eaters in the campus will be stopped for a while, and they can only concentrate on dealing with the ice, watermelon and corn butter falling from the sky. And the second batch of Death Eaters who were supposed to follow were gathered outside the gate. If they entered the campus now, the limited space inside would be even more crowded. The remaining Death Eaters waited for the next order farther from the gate. At this moment, a row of mushrooms suddenly appeared behind the campus wall. The difference between them and the big puff mushrooms is that their bodies are thin and long like bamboo poles. These mushrooms simultaneously spray spores at the Death Eaters outside the gate. In just a few seconds, the Death Eaters were surrounded by a large cloud of spores. Just when these Death Eaters were about to use spells to create a wind to expel the poisonous haze, 2 Hogwarts students with baskets on their backs flew above them, and then took all the peppers in the baskets behind them fell down. Seeing this scene, Zhang Su sprayed out a mouthful of fat house-happy water, and almost fell off the broom. Damn it, they're trying to cause a dust explosion. Chapter 514 The Battle of Hogwarts, 3. When watching the peppers falling from the sky fall into the spore haze, Zhang Su remembered that a necessary condition for a dust explosion is that the dust must be combustible. But these fresh spores should contain water, so they shouldn't be able to burn. Just when Zhang Su was wondering, a large group of flames lit up, and a deafening rumbling sound spread into the air a few seconds later. The stunned Zhang Su looked at the seemingly unscientific and unmagical scene in front of him, and decided to find some time to ask Neville how they did it. Otherwise, one day when I go to pick mushrooms to make soup base, I will accidentally turn into a big battle. The loud bang became the signal for a counterattack, and several corns almost as big as Hagrid was standing flew into the air, and then fell into the crowd of Death Eaters on the campus. After a loud noise, even the Death Eaters who were protected by the iron armor curse were stunned by the shock wave. In the air, the students with baskets on their backs dumped peppers, cherries and destruction mushrooms in the baskets to the Death Eaters outside the school. Seeing that the gate of the castle was opened and the people inside began to countercharge, Yuri commented from the side, The connection between firepower and counterattack is out of touch, the interval is too long, and no effective coordination has been formed. When they rush to the front line at that time, many enemies who were stunned before have recovered. After all, they are just students and professors, not soldiers who have been coordinated by infantry, or scavengers who have been picking up shrapnel in the artillery shooting range all year round. Zhang Su said, "We can't demand perfection from them. But at least they will hit the enemy lying down, which is not bad." Mrs. Adams also flew over to join the discussion. "This is a standardized process." Zhang Su shrugged, "We cannot afford casualties. Conservation sometimes means safety." Over the years, Zhang Su has cultivated a spirit among Hogwarts students of not enough strength to buy equipment and equipment by selling the iron armor charm amulets. The following group of students are all equipped with complete equipment and potions. If they have not encountered the Avada Kedavra, they can deal with the Death Eaters one-on-one before the durability of the equipment and the potion are exhausted. It has a great advantage. Now Hogwarts students occupy the right time, place and crowd. How could they not fight in groups? Without threats, a transfiguration spell can build a slope or staircase to climb over tall nuts, or condescendingly cast a spell on a Death Eater. In less than 10 minutes, all the Death Eaters in the campus had been cleaned up, and the students and professors were preparing to charge outside the gate. "Looks like I'm going to help them," Zhang Su said to the people around him. "When you're done with the broom and flying sword, put them in the Forbidden Forest. I'll take them back with the flying curse." Then he looked at the person standing on the other end of the broom and asked, "Why don't you share the broom with others first? I'll go too, just to say hello to someone." Zhang was relieved. It turned out that this Italian was an acquaintance with someone from Hogwarts. Just looking at his height and figure, he probably was a relative of Professor Flitwick. Given Zhang's relationship with Professor Flitwick, it's not surprising that his relatives know him and are familiar with him. "Are you a relative of a certain professor?" Zhang Su asked tentatively. "You can see it." The other party was a little surprised. "Well, I should have thought of it earlier," Zhang Su replied. "Then let's go there together." The situation on the battlefield is not optimistic at this moment. The ammunition of the Air Force has been exhausted. Although the Death Eaters in front of the gate suffered heavy casualties, the Death Eaters in the rear have experienced a little confusion after being hit by a few destruction mushrooms. Reorganized by Snape. An organized team and an unorganized team's combat effectiveness are two different things, so Zhang Su must now disrupt these organized Death Eaters. And the best way to confuse the enemy is to behead them. Beat Snape up and let him go, and the other Death Eaters will naturally disperse. Death Eaters are not a well-disciplined, well-organized force, they are only slightly better than a mess. Zhang Su didn't think he had the power to take Snape's hair out of millions of troops, so now he could only rely on a sneak attack for a quick victory. What spell is most useful for sneak attack at night? Of course it is the lighting technique, except for Moody or Lydon. This spell can often work wonders when the lighting conditions are not good at night. After Zhang Su flew over the battlefield, he swooped down while manipulating the broom while preparing spells. Greek letter Omega Golden Mountain shines in all directions. The next moment, after hearing the solemn voice above their heads, the Death Eaters looked up into the night sky to find the source of the sound, only to feel a golden light countless times stronger than the sun appear in front of their eyes, and then their eyes went dark. Can't see anything anymore. At the same time, the Death Eaters who were born as dark wizards also felt that their magic power was being suppressed, and trembled as if they had encountered a natural enemy. Their attempts to use magic spells to restore their eyesight failed. Also blind was Snape, who just looked up and was caught. Just as Snape was about to use apparition to run away, a sheep-changing spell fell into the sky, and he turned into a bleeding black goat on the spot. "If you mess around again, I'll hand you over to Aberforth Dumbledore, he." After being transformed into a goat, Snape regained his eyesight, and knew what he had been transformed from the appearance of his front hooves and voice. As for Aberforth's attitude towards sheep, Snape is very clear, so Zhang's intimidation of him is very useful. After tying Snape to the broomstick and letting the broom fly back to Hogwarts with it, Zhang Su started attacking the Death Eaters around him. At this time, the little man rubbing against his broomstick also came down. Zhang Su patted the other person on the shoulder, and said, "I said buddy, how about we compare who can kill more?" The next moment, a 381-meter-long magic wand hit Zhang Su's ribs. "What do you call me?" Although your voice is a bit crisp, but judging by your figure, you should be a man. Before Zhang Su could finish his sentence, he rolled aside, and then a curse hit a Death Eater behind him, and that Death Eater was blown away to nowhere after a boom. After the interruption just now, the vision of some Death Eaters around them began to recover. Now is not the time to play around. Zhang Su cast a frost halo, freezing a circle of Death Eaters around him and allies who were caught off guard and did not dodge. Chapter 515. The first to come to support Zhang Su was Ron and the others who had completed the airstrike mission in the sky. They flew directly from the sky and landed around Zhang Su. It's just that Ron's landing position was wrong, and he was split into an exploding head by someone Zhang's chain lightning tail. Fortunately, the tail was not very powerful, and with the iron armor curse on his body, Ron recovered after shaking a few times. "Your magic is back," Ron asked after knocking down a Death Eater with a stunning charm. "Barely," Zhang Su replied, "as long as you don't use high-strength magic, it's fine." "Who is that person?" Ron asked, pointing to the little man who was blowing the Death Eaters away. "Where did you find such a powerful girl?" She is an Italian order, and she is related to a professor in this school, maybe Professor Flitwick's relative," Zhang Su replied. Now the Death Eaters were flanked by Zhang Su, Ron and the students who rushed out of the school, and they found that Snape was missing, and their morale collapsed very quickly. The remaining Death Eaters had no interest in fighting, and soon some were fleeing. Harry led the crowd to launch a counter-charge and shot a spell at the last Death Eater on the scene. As a result, the Death Eater apparated and disappeared at the last moment, and the spell passed from where the Death Eater was standing. Flew to someone Zhang. The vigilant Zhang's heart jumped wildly, and he immediately threw himself to the side, and another donkey rolled to avoid Harry's spell. Then the curse fell on the back of Ron's head. "It's a pity," Harry said in a low voice, looking at Ron who was lying on the ground straight and passed out, and Zhang who hid there. The battle at Hogwarts was over, and the Death Eaters who attacked Hogsmeade soon got the news, so they also retreated. The students who breathed a sigh of relief began to clean up the scene, while the students with cameras began to take pictures. Such a big event happened. If you don't take a picture and post it on your moments later, then the Death Eater's visit will be in vain. And for publicity purposes, Harry and others need to take some additional photos of the battle. At the same time, the students found the Death Eaters who had lost their mobility and tied them up. After Colin and the others took pictures, they handed them over to the Ministry of Magic. After finishing these things, the students were driven back to the castle by Zhang Su and the professors. "Are you sure you will do the rest of the work yourself?" Professor McGonagall asked. Looking at the Death Eater corpses on the ground, Zhang Su sighed, and said, "Let me do it. I'm worried that they will leave an indelible psychological shadow on them." In this battle, many Death Eaters were killed, and some of the corpses looked horrible. The corpse poisoned by the spores of the big puff mushroom is still intact. Those who had been burned by burning pea stuck in corn butter and killed by dust explosions were now reeking of burnt meat. Some of the watermelons that suffered several iced watermelons in a row were frozen into ice cubes and then smashed into pieces, and now they have thawed. There are also destroyed mushrooms and fried cherries evenly distributed around from the vomit on the ground. One can imagine the reaction of those students just now. If they were allowed to collect the corpses again, they would probably have nightmares every day before using the forgetting curse and would not be able to sleep well. And these corpses had to be disposed of as soon as possible, otherwise they would become zombies later. An NBSP, then is there anything we can do to help? Professor Flitwick, who was standing on the other side of Zhang Su, asked. Well, Zhang Su thought for a while, and then said, "It would be great if we could find a suitable place to bury these things deeply, preferably at a proper distance from the school." Professor Flitwick said he knew there was such a place, so he left the campus with Zhang Su. "Professor, is it okay to let the two of them quarrel?" When he walked out of the school gate, Zhang Su pointed to the two who were bickering not far from the school gate. At this time, Scarlet pointed to the little Italian and said, "The chest is not big, but the tone is not small." Then the two raised their wands and fought. "It's okay." Professor Flitwick shrank his head and dodged a curse that flew over from there. "Wee is a good child, she will not do anything to hurt others." Zhang Su said and left with Professor Flitwick. In the European wizarding world, it is easy to get involved with relatives. The father of this little Italian is a distant relative of Professor Flitwick, and his mother is a relative of Scarlet, so genetically, she has both the figure of the Flitwick family and the red pupils of the Scarlet family. Moreover, she and Simow were best friends who would make a fuss when they met when they were young. "Are the middle-aged women standing there taking care of themselves so well?" Zhang Su said with emotion. About half a mile away from Hogwarts, there was a large wasteland overgrown with weeds, 1 or 200 meters away from the road where students took carriages to the school, but Zhang Su usually passed by without noticing it. "It's pretty good here," Zhang Su said to Professor Flitwick. "I'll dig a hole here first." Digging a pit is a very simple matter. First, use magic to dig a deep pit on the ground that is as thick as a bowl and about 10 feet deep, then put an appropriate amount of explosives into it, and finally detonate it. After the pit was built, Zhang Su went to the edge of the forbidden forest and chopped a few trees into firewood and piled them aside. Then the corpses of the Death Eaters were obtained by magic, and they were arranged in the pit layer by layer of wood and layer by body. In the end it was set on fire. Fortunately, the wind direction was good today, and the smoke was drifting towards Hogsmeade, which made the Auror who came to investigate after hearing the explosion just now very depressed. While the fire was still burning, Zhang Su found a large rock that had been blown out nearby, sat on another rock and cut it into a slate with a Shenfeng stonemason said Wuang, and began to carve words on it. "What are you writing?" a voice sounded from behind Zhang Su. "I'm writing down the origins of these corpses, and then I'm burying them with the corpses," Zhang Su replied. "Otherwise, if someone digs up these corpses in the future, it may be reported that Hogwarts is doing evil human experiments." Rumors. After a while, Zhang Su finished carving the characters on the slate and put the slate aside. "Why are you here?" Zhang Su asked. "I'll take a look." Under the light of the fire, it could be seen that Harry's expression was not good. "What's so interesting here?" Zhang Su took out a few bottles of beer and put them on the ground while talking, and then threw a bottle to Harry. Degree-o blow o to the bottle for victory. A place filled with the smell of burnt meat is not a good place for drinking. Harry looked at the beer in his hand, gritted his teeth and drank it all. Chapter 516 Sitting by the High Fire. Today was the day Harry felt the most pressure on his shoulders in 17 years. Whenever he thought that most of the safety of Hogwarts fell on his shoulders, the tension made his hands tremble uncontrollably. It wasn't until the counterattack began that he took the lead and led his classmates to rush towards the Death Eaters. In a state of high concentration in the battle, he temporarily let go of the tension in his heart, so that in the end he still had the heart to plan to slap Zhang Su. When the battle was over, this sense of tension enveloped him again. He didn't relax until he confirmed that only a few of his classmates suffered minor injuries and no one died in this battle. After asking Professor Flitwick what Zhang Su was doing, he quietly left the campus and came to the cremation pit. It was the first time Harry saw a corpse burning in flames, and was shocked by the scene before him. He had to find an unrelated topic to divert his attention. What made him calm down completely was that he finished a bottle of beer that Zhang Su handed over. The cold beer cleared Harry's mind. He hastily touched his chest and found nothing, which made him heave a sigh of relief. Zhang Su noticed Harry's movements, squinted at him, and said, "I'm not interested in turning you into a little girl now. So you will do it again in the future." Harry immediately discovered a loophole in Zhang Su's words. "Don't pay attention to the details," Zhang Su said. "Don't you know that it is very dangerous for you to leave the magical protection range of Hogwarts now? I'll be back later." Harry waved his wand for a rock, and sat down next to the beer bottle. "Do you still have that potion?" Harry asked. Zhang Su gave Harry a horrified look, then lifted the stone under his butt and moved away from him a little. "I'm not using it for myself." Harry waved his hands hastily to explain, "I'm using it for Neville." As a result, Zhang Su spit out a mouthful of beer, and moved away from Harry again. "I didn't expect you to be like this, Harry," Zhang Su said in horror. "Ginny will be sad." Harry realized how many mistakes he had made, and for a moment didn't know how to continue. At this moment, Zhang Su took out a bundle of wands with a 5-pointed star in each end from his pocket and threw them to Harry. "Take one and try to input magic power like using a wand," Zhang Su said to Harry. Balala Energy Unila Magic Fairy Transformation W. When Harry used a strange wand according to what Zhang Su said, he stood up involuntarily, then held the wand in one hand, and chanted unknown spells while turning in circles. When her body regained control, Harley, who was wearing a bright yellow dress that was flirtatiously flirtatious, knew that she had been tricked by Zhang Su again. This kind of transformation can only last for about half an hour, so don't worry. Zhang Su, who took out his camera at the first time, said while taking pictures of Harley, "These transformation wands are given to you. I won't give you any presents on Christmas Day, Harley. What else can I do? 1,000 words can only be turned into a sentence in my heart. Now your mood is calmer," Zhang Su said to Harley. "I will use a method similar to legilimency magic, When you look at people, you can see the emotions of the other person. Just now your emotions were obviously anxious, tense, and restless, but now you are much better than before. Unable to resist, Harley could only sit on the rock again, then depressively picked up a bottle of beer and poured one. After a long time, Harry, who smelled of alcohol, pointed to the burning fire in front of him and said, "Zhang, what do you think of them?" "What do you mean?" Zhang Su raised his eyebrows. "I think they also have family members." Halfway through Hallie's words, Zhang Su interrupted her. "Do you still remember your family?" Zhang Su angrily snapped at Harry. "Do you still remember the corpse in the cave that year? Do you know how many ordinary people in the UK have died at the hands of Death Eaters for more than a year?" Zhang Su looked at Holly suspiciously, wondering if she had been dropped by someone, or had been cast under the Imperious curse. Otherwise, how could she have such an idea? "What do you want to do?" Harry asked in horror when he saw Zhang Su gesturing on his head with a beer bottle. "I want to use physical methods to lift the Imperious curse for you," Zhang Su said after raising the wine bottle in his hand. "By the way Harry held his head in defense is also unique. By the way, how did you come up with such an idea?" Zhang Su asked after putting down the bottle in his hand. He was very surprised. Could it be because Holly has been a mother for too long and turned into a virgin in the end? "Many of them are not British," Harry replied, "or their families." It was a thick booklet thrown by Zhang Su who interrupted Harry. "Look for yourself, and see who these people who came to the UK to rely on the double hole socket are." Zhang Su said speechlessly. "Percy gave it to me, and the statistics of the International Horror Organization came to the UK. Information about the Black Wizard." In the deep pit in front of Harry, the Death Eater's corpse was quickly dehydrated by the flames, then charred, then burned with the firewood below, and finally turned into a plume of thick smoke. Under the light from the burning corpse, Harley casually opened the booklet in her hand, and a picture of blood and minced flesh appeared in front of her. After a while, Zhang Su said to Harry, who had closed the booklet, "So don't feel guilty about the deaths of these people. Good people don't become Death Eaters. I killed someone just now," Harry said after drinking half a bottle of beer for himself. "Couldn't it be Ron?" Zhang Su interrupted. "Now that I think about it, Harry's curse just now was aimed at him." Harry ignored him, and continued by herself, "I just wanted to cut off his wand, but I ended up cutting it on his neck." "Well, there was a corpse that was beheaded," Zhang Su said after thinking about it. "I threw him on the middle floor." At this moment, Harry couldn't help retching a few times. "Damn it, aren't you pregnant?" Zhang Su hurriedly changed the subject. "Whose child is it?" "Earl, why can you treat these corpses as if nothing happened?" Harry asked a question in her heart with a puzzled expression. "Many people are too scared." Zhang Su glanced at Holly, and said quietly, "It's thanks to you." Chapter 517. Oh, Holly scratched the back of his head in confusion and looked at Zhang Su. "It's not about my wife, it's about me." Zhang Su thought for a while, and what happened back then is not something that needs to be kept extremely secret, so after thinking about it, he said, "Do you still remember that when you were a boy, you once met in a Quidditch match? Dementor, you fell off the broom and were blown away. I got you back later." Harley naturally remembered this incident, and she was very grateful to Zhang Su for this, so she ignored certain parts of the other party's words. "Of course I remember. I still remember that time you were seriously injured." Harry nodded and said, "I am very grateful to you for saving me. Why don't you take advantage of this good opportunity and give me a hug? Go aside." After molesting Harley, Zhang Su continued, "That day I went back to the moment before you were blown away, and then flew with you for a while, and finally brought you back to the ground. And the wound on my body was there before that." In the following time, Zhang Su briefly talked about his experience of playing with the time converter back then, but he still didn't say some things. Then Zhang Su found that Harry's spirit suddenly became aroused, his breathing became heavy, his neck, face, ears and eyes turned red due to congestion, and his hands trembled uncontrollably. Zhang's heart shouted for pills, and Harley thought of a question that was often mentioned in many fanfiction: what if the time turner was used to go back in time and kill Voldemort, or save Harley's parents? Just as Zhang Su was about to raise his wand, Harley looked mechanized, but who would have thought that Harley would pounce on him? Harry grabbed Zhang Su's hands and said excitedly, "Then can we go back to the past?" 999 because now Harley 2.0 is only physically feminized, and her face is only feminized on the basis of Harry, So now Hallie not only still has the scar on her forehead and the glasses on the bridge of her nose, but also the outline of her face. I could see Harry's face coupled with her terrible line just now. The self-inflicted Zhang received a double blow on the spot. Zhang Su, whose health bar was almost emptied, immediately transformed into Zhang Panda, and after breaking free from Harry, he immediately transformed back and gave her a BIU magic to calm down. Sit down, or I'll knock you out now and throw you back into the Gryffindor common room while you're still looking like this. After Zhang Su finished speaking, he thought of a sentence that Lu Xun said, he is about like a Spanish cow. When he sees red, he will become excited and make a terrible move. Harley, who had calmed down, was shocked after hearing Zhang Su's threat, and then sat down obediently on the rock. Time travel follows the principle of Novikov's self-consistency. Zhang Su said to Hallie very seriously, people can go back to the past, but they can't change the course of history. You can understand it as our current world, it is the final ending that has been changed. If you try to disturb the flow of the river of time, then you are caught in a vortex that time creates to correct itself. For example, if you go back to when your father was still in Hogwarts and killed your father, will you still exist, or did you kill yourself 10 years ago? Then Zhang Su threw a bunch of questions about the time paradox to Harry, causing her to fall into deep thought. Seeing Harry sitting there struggling, Zhang Su picked up a bottle of beer on the ground and drank it himself. Today's matter can be regarded as he has not thought carefully about it, and he didn't expect that Harry's mind would turn so quickly on this issue. Fortunately, now Harley can't get the time turner easily, otherwise she will definitely go back to the past with a time turner and say it rashly when the time comes. Maybe she will fold there. Over time, not long after Harley turned back into Harry, he seemed to come to a conclusion. Then can I just watch in the dark? Harry asked, his words full of bitterness. I just want to see my parents. Because of the loyalty curse, you can only see their last moments. Zhang Su said in a deep voice, I don't think it's a pleasant thing to witness the murder of my parents. Let me think again. Harry bent down and buried his head between his legs. At this time, the fire in the deep pit had become smaller, and Zhang Su began to backfill the earth and rocks that had been blown up when digging the pit just now. Backfilling with earth and rock may seem like a lot of work, but with magic it's easy. Zhang Su only needs to gather the earth and rocks on the ground into huge human figures, control them to run back into the pit, and then release the magic. The earth and rock figures who lost the control of magic will automatically spread out to fill the deep pit. It's just that it's a little troublesome when digging, because it's much easier to gather the loose soil into a human shape than to dig out a human shape from the solid soil on the ground. He still remembers the scene he saw when he was a child. At the construction site for digging foundation pits, soil men of the same size came out from the mound dug out by the excavator, and they walked neatly into the bucket of the dump truck. Lie down on the ground, and the spell will be released after the car is full. This not only saves the shift fee of the excavator, but also facilitates the calculation of the excavated earth and stone. After burying the stone slab and covering it with a layer of soil, Zhang Su saw a cloud of water vapor rising from the raised mound due to the residual heat of the underground fire. He patted Harry's shoulder, who was still struggling, and said, Okay, I've finished my affairs here, and it's time to go back. On the way back to Hogwarts Castle, Harry suddenly asked Zhang Su, Zhang, how many people have you killed in total? Zhang Su grinned, and replied, Why do you care about this matter? I can't say the exact number myself. I found that you didn't become a dark wizard because of killing people. Harry said while carefully looking at Zhang Su. You're afraid that you'll become a dark wizard because you killed someone. Zhang Su is relieved of one of Harry's core issues tonight. Harry's wish is to become an Auror who fights against evil forces. If he becomes a dark wizard himself, this job will be impossible. After seeing Harry nodding, Zhang Su regained his original momentum and said, The standard of a dark wizard is not just based on the number of people killed. Harry, who was walking with his head bowed, suddenly felt his heart tighten, and immediately jumped aside. Looking at Zhang Su warily at this moment, he realized that Zhang Su in front of him was so strange. Chapter 518 Blow, Keep Blowing. Harry thought that no one else knew about his slipping out of the Hogwarts campus, but his behavior could not be hidden from the eyes of some people who had been watching him. After knowing Harry's movements, his bodyguards lurked around immediately. Zhang Su first made a calm gesture to Moody, Lupin, and Black, who had been hiding and secretly protecting Harry, and then scratched his head and asked Harry, Hey, have you ever seen me like this? Now Harry shook his head. Indeed he hadn't seen it. I remember Dumbledore told you about dark wizards last year, Zhang Su said to Harry. Hearing Zhang Su mention Dumbledore, Harry nodded sadly. Then you should know what is the most essential difference between a black wizard and a white wizard, Zhang Su asked. Maliciousness in the soul, Harry replied. That's it, Zhang Su said. It's like the Avada Kedavra curse. Remember what Barty Crouch Jr. said back then? The effect of using this unforgivable curse by the students is just to make his nose bleed. That's because the caster of the spell has the malice in his heart to take other people's lives, so it is the spell that can take people's lives. If the caster doesn't have that kind of malice in his heart, then this spell can only be a forgiveness curse. The criteria for a dark wizard are the same. Whether a person is a dark wizard or not depends on whether he has any malice towards the world in his heart. And your definition of dark wizards is too narrow. It is difficult to define all wizards in the world based on this alone. Treat comrades with warmth like spring, and treat enemies with cruelty and ruthlessness like severe winter. Many people can actually do such things. For example, Mrs. Weasley, she is as warm as spring to us. But if you, Ron, and Ginny are faced with death threats from Death Eaters, I believe she will definitely kill Death Eaters without hesitation. So was Mrs. Weasley a dark wizard then, and after that? Harry couldn't come to a conclusion for a long time. He knew his future mother-in-law. If his child was threatened, she would definitely be able to kill someone, but in that way, the mother-in-law who killed someone for the sake of the child can be regarded as a black wizard? So, you must stick to your original intention. Zhang Su continued to preach, killing is just a means, not an end. You have to know what you are killing for, not killing for the sake of killing. Although I kill, set fire, and poison, I know that I am a good person. What about you now? Harry asked in an uncertain tone. It's nothing, it can only be regarded as some pollution. You heard me just now. After all, the scenes I encountered back then were much bigger than now. Zhang Su replied indifferently after returning to his usual good student appearance. That appearance is just a part of my life. It is not important to my life now, and it has no effect on my daily life. At this moment, Zhang Su and Harry had already entered the campus. Well, how did you manage to do that at the time? Harry continued, didn't your minds be completely eroded by that kind of power during the war? Because we were soldiers of the People's Army at that time. Zhang Su replied solemnly, we serve the people wholeheartedly, fight for the interests of the broad masses of the people, always maintain ties with the masses of the people, and share weal and woe with the masses of the people. Serve the people wholeheartedly. We have a revolutionary discipline that is subordinate to the fundamental interests of the people. This discipline is based on safeguarding the fundamental interests of the people and is based on the political consciousness of all soldiers. It is an important guarantee for uniting ourselves, defeating the enemy and completing all tasks. We are the Great Wall of Steel that defends the socialist motherland, and an important force in building socialist material and spiritual civilization. In our hearts, we have a more grand and lofty goal than killing. Under this goal, how little negative desires are. Harry nodded, half understood. Anyway, he didn't understand a lot about what Zhang Su said, so he didn't care about it. Tonight's incident with Harry sounded the alarm to Zhang Su. His self-blame for murder should not be isolated. Under the current situation, the thoughts of other students are likely to appear question. If the minds of Hogwarts students decline on a large scale, it will be an extremely terrible disaster for Hogwarts. It seems that I have to find a time to talk to Professor McGonagall about the ideological work of the students. When Zhang Su and Harry walked to the foyer, they saw Colin running out of the stairs leading to the basement. As soon as Colin saw Zhang Su, he rushed over and dragged him to the basement. It's great to have you back, said Colin excitedly. Everyone is waiting for you in the kitchen. What are you waiting for? Zhang Su asked strangely. Colin explained, it's been a busy night tonight, everyone is hungry, so we all went to the cafeteria for dinner. Oh. Zhang Su said, you can add extra meals, why are you waiting for me? No one would dare to start without you. Colin continued excitedly, everyone is arguing about how to eat, and they are all waiting for you to come back and make a decision. Zhang Su continued with a question mark on his face, and asked, why do you have to let me approve everything you eat? Usually, one or two of you do it yourself. After all, you prepared the ingredients this time. Colin replied, some people want to roast and eat, and some people want to cook in hot pot. Everyone can't argue, so it depends on your plan. What are you guys going to eat? Zhang Su had a bad premonition. Of course it's the sheep you caught, Colin said excitedly. Zhang Su threw off the stunned Colin and Harry with a fuck and rushed to the kitchen. When Zhang Su came to the kitchen, the place was full of people's voices, and there were several people who stepped on the table and bragged loudly. "Ah, Zhang is back. Zhang, hurry up and bake tonight's main course nonsense, let's use it for hot pot. If you don't come back, we plan to help you deal with the sheep first." When Zhang Su came to the fireplace, he found a huge charcoal grill on both sides of the fireplace, and an extra-large copper crucible that was steaming on the stove. And the bound Sneeba was lying on the floor in front of the fireplace with a look of lovelessness, and someone next to him was explaining to other friends how his family killed sheep. Chapter 519. Regarding the fact that Sneeba was almost eaten, Zhang must be responsible to a certain extent. First of all, Mr. Zhang once went to the Forbidden Forest with Harry and the others to catch a few delicious native sheep. Many students who came to eat them still can't forget the taste. Secondly, many students knew about Zhang who volunteered to patrol the Forbidden Forest just now. Third, Mr. Zhang just sent a sheep to the kitchen with his own broomstick and locked it up. So a group of smart students took this as an argument and came to the conclusion that it was a native sheep caught by someone Zhang from the Forbidden Forest. After all, no one has ever seen a live native sheep. The last time they saw it was already cut, so under the guidance of preconceived ideas, a group of people did not expect that this was a real sheep. Sneeba, who was lying on the ground at that time, was in despair. Whether it turned into a night snack, or the magic on his body disappeared and returned to his original form before that, as long as these two things happened before Zhang came back, he would be sure. It is impossible to see the sun the next day. If he changes back to his original form in front of this group of students now, just because he is the murderer who killed Dumbledore, he doesn't think he can survive the siege of these students without using apparition to survive. And Zhang Su is also having a headache now, because he hasn't figured out how to deal with the captured Sneeba, whether to turn it off or let it go, whether to stew it or bake it. He doesn't have a plan yet, so he needs to discuss it with someone. However, he has to deal with a group of people in the kitchen now, so he just made up an excuse to say that the sheep was real, and he couldn't eat it yet, and then took enough lamb from the kitchen's inventory to toss these people. When Zhang Su was eating the mutton stuffed dumplings left by Professor McGonagall and the others during the day, he accidentally noticed that Sneeba had been staring at him. His eyes were probably similar to those of a master who was captured by a monster and was about to wash and steam them. After supper, Zhang Su left the kitchen after asking the house elf in the kitchen to help feed Sneeba some carrots and tomatoes tomorrow morning. After taking a nice hot bath in the professor's bathroom, Zhang Su went back to the dormitory of Eagle Academy and slept soundly. However, what Zhang Su didn't know was that before going to bed, Harry routinely took out the Marauder's map to check the security work in the castle. Not long after, Harry suddenly jumped out of bed, picked up his wand and rushed out of the dormitory without even putting on his robe and shoes. Harry's move startled Neville and Ron in the dormitory, and they hurriedly picked up their wands and followed them out. Three dividing line Hogwarts students started the official first day of school this school year with laughter. The cause of the incident was that when everyone was preparing for breakfast, Neville suddenly stood up and made an extremely shameful gesture, and then turned into a girl in a purple gothic dress. At that time, the scene was very happy. According to incomplete statistics, at least a dozen students in the cafeteria were rushed to the school infirmary because their breakfast was choked into their lungs. Then Navi, Harry, and Zhang Su, who had just eaten half of breakfast, were caught by Professor McGonagall and reprimanded in the corridor outside the cafeteria. Zhang Su, face JPG, how did this pot fall on me? After the mealtime, when the students left the cafeteria and went to their classrooms, Zhang Su suddenly felt someone pulling his sleeve and ran away. What's the matter, Ginny? Zhang Su asked the excited Ginny standing in front of him in the empty corridor. I'm rushing to the Ancient Runes research classroom now. The one with the star that Neville used this morning, you gave it to Harry, right? Ginny had a look like a child looking forward to a new toy, and little stars were about to appear in her eyes. No, it's all for Harry. Zhang Su shook his head and said, those were originally intended to be gifts for Gabriel at Christmas. Ginny turned into a dejected look in the next second. Zhang Su wiped his sweat aside, and silently mourned for Harry for 3 seconds. But I still have a good thing here. Zhang Su reached into his pocket, and then took out something like Tinker Bell. Dress-up camera. Seeing the treasure Zhang Su took out, Ginny's eyes became sharp. After sending Ginny away, Zhang Su rushed into the classroom before class started. During the roll call before class, Zhang Su saw that Professor Babbling was a bit haggard, as if he didn't sleep well last night. However, he is used to this. In the past few years, he has not seen such a scientific research madman as Professor Babbling forgetting to eat and sleep because of his research. Is everyone ready? Professor Babbling said to the students after the roll call, "The content of our class today is to use runes to set an alarm magic on a door. This magic needs to be sensitive enough. When the body or spell of a strange wizard touches the door will call the police. At the same time, it needs enough secrecy. The content of the lectures is in line with the current situation. Now many people are afraid that one day the Death Eaters will suddenly knock on the door. It's just that today's class content looks simple, but it is difficult to do." The students in the classroom suddenly fell into a sea of worry. Everyone was writing and drawing on the draft paper with a quill pen, not even Zhang Su exception. If he only calls the police when strangers push the door, he can fix it in minutes. The curse that cheated Snape back then can be expressed in runes. The problem is that many wizards in real life prefer to open doors with spells instead of hands, and identifying the owner of the spell is much more difficult than identifying the person touching the door, so the entire spell has to be redesigned. Professor Babbling walked around every student, pointing out the mistakes on their draft paper from time to time. When Zhang Su, who had failed twice, was sitting at the table, took out a yellow rubber duck the size of a fist, put it on the table, and patiently explained the function of each rune to the little yellow duck, Professor Babbling asked fucked him. After Zhang Su discovered his first mistake and corrected it, Professor Babbling asked him, "Are you free tonight? If you are free, come to my office at 8 o'clock. Generally speaking, when a beautiful mature professor asks a strong and handsome boy to come to her office at night, it is often accompanied by a burst of car exhaust. But Zhang Su can assure that Professor Babbling's request to go has nothing to do with any means of transportation, and all she needs is a labor force to help her do the work. Sure enough, Zhang Su was called that night to help repair and reinforce the campus gate that was breached and blown open last night. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520. Degrees month soft as snow through the screen window, faintly from the Milky Way seep lightly in the vast breeze. It's the clear fragrance of lotus paste dividing line. Tonight has been half a month since the start of school night, which can be said to be thrilling, and the time has come to the 15th day of the 8th month of the year of the Ding Zhou Ox, that is, September 1997, 9 AD. During these half a month, Hogwarts and Hogsmeade were peaceful. Voldemort didn't send half a Death Eater to cause trouble, as if he had forgotten that there was such a place in the world. Without external threats, this year's freshmen quickly integrated into the life of Hogwarts. It's just that the threat of war still exists. Last weekend, Hogwarts held a school-wide evacuation drill. According to the requirements of the Exercise Director Department, the Hogwarts junior students must assemble within 15 minutes, and then under the leadership of a special person, turn to the mountain north of Hogwarts Castle to park Dumbledore through a newly built secret road, Leto, and was eventually evacuated elsewhere aboard Dumbledore. And Zhang Su's assignment was to lead the junior students to board the plane, and then he would drive the space shuttle to transfer in, which was in line with his plan to run away if there was a disagreement. However, many problems arose during the exercise. For example, the planning of the evacuation route in the castle. The ever-changing staircase in Hogwarts Castle has become the biggest unstable factor that delays the evacuation of students during the rehearsal. The first-year students of the Snake Academy and the second-year students of the Eagle Academy were blocked on a staircase, which almost caused a stampede accident. At the summary meeting of the transfer exercise held that night, everyone from the professor to the prefect was at a loss for what to do about this problem. In the end, Zhang made a suggestion to simply jump out of the window, and was later given a he-face by Professor Aurora Sinista of the astronomy class. The place where Professor Sinista teaches is at the highest point of Hogwarts, and she doesn't mind if Zhang Su tries to dance first. In short, as long as the thinking does not slip, there are always more solutions than difficulties. Problems that cannot be solved on the spot are recorded first, and everyone will slowly find a solution in the future. The time came to the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival. Tonight's astronomy class was over, and Professor Sinista came to the top of the observatory to make a final inspection after get off work. "Are you really going to try to jump from here later?" Professor Sinista looked at Zhang Su, who didn't know when he ran up in surprise. Come, Professor, have a mooncake. Zhang Su called Professor Sinista to come and eat mooncakes together. When Zhang Su was admiring the moon on the top of the observatory last time, there was a large pressure cooker here. Next to the pressure cooker was a Lupin who was about to accept his fate and drink a cup of green fluorescent liquid. And now, Zhang Su has set up a tea table here, with a few months of cakes and a set of tea sets on it. Oh, I remember today is your holiday. Professor Sinista sat down across the coffee table and said, today should be the day you reunite with your family. As a professor of astronomy, Professor Sinista is very familiar with astronomy-related festivals around the world. Why aren't you with your family today? Professor Sinista said after taking a plate with quartered mooncakes from Zhang Su. My family is not on the UK. Zhang Su said while pouring tea for Professor Sinista. Real Professor Sinista gave Zhang Su a funny face. I really thought we people didn't know anything, Professor Sinista said. Zhang Su said he and remained silent. Seeing Zhang Su's embarrassment, Professor Sinista didn't continue to gossip, but pointed to a big black guy standing in the center of the platform under the bright moonlight and asked, how do you use such a big tool to watch the moon? Is your astronomical telescope here to watch? What Professor Sinista was referring to was a bucket-sized astronomical telescope on a tripod, pointed directly at the moon and at the eyepiece of the astronomical telescope. A magically modified camera system was installed, which transmitted the images seen from the telescope to a large monitor next to Zhang Su in real time. There are not many people who admire the moon like this. I'm waiting to take a photo. Zhang Su replied, tonight, an unmanned spacecraft will fly right between us and the moon. Such photos will be extremely valuable. After experiencing the incident on the Mir space station, Professor Sinista went to Zhang Su's reading room to supplement some knowledge about man-made spacecraft, so she was not surprised by Zhang Su's words. Is it the newly launched space station again? Professor Sinista asked. No. Zhang Su shook his head and replied, that's the Shenzhou, unmanned spacecraft that our country just launched 2 days ago. When I saw the headline on the front page of the overseas edition of the People's Daily delivered by an owl that day, when Shenzhou, was successfully launched, Zhang Su was stunned. Why did you say that Shenzhou, was launched a year earlier? Although the country is taking the road of making up for the lack of technology, the aerospace industry is no exception, but whenever such news comes out, he feels that this world is really too magical. As for the manned spaceflight project plan mentioned in the second page of the newspaper, manned spaceflight technology matured in the first decade of the 21st century. A long-term manned space station was established in the late 10s, and the Guanghan Palace base was established on the moon in the late 10s. Striving for 20, Zhang Su knew about the plan to land on Mars at the end of the 30s when he visited Guangno in Dunhuang many years ago. Now it seems that these plans may be completed on time. At this moment, Mr. Zhang's heart was extremely restless, because from the day when he read the newspaper, a bold idea came into his mind. The moon, if only I could go up once. Professor Sinista looked at the full moon in the night sky and said with emotion, Zhang, if you can go up, remember to bring me some moon oil back. Professor Sinista's last words were a joke to Zhang Su. No problem, I'll take care of it. Zhang Su agreed, when the base on the moon is built, I'll spend money to go there. Zhang said so with a certain degree of confidence in terms of economy. As long as he doesn't die and turn into the ditch, it will basically not be a problem in 30 years, and the problems that can be solved with money will not be problems in terms of politics. It may be possible to show off the spectrum of revolutionary veterans by then in terms of technology. As long as the line of insufficient technology and magic power does not waver, he will have a chance. Thinking about it this way, it seems that this matter may really be done by then. The first batch of settlers will definitely not be able to get it, and then there will always be a rotation. There are many scientists from all walks of life on the International Space Station. Someone stretched out his hand and shook Zhang Su's eyes, and then pulled Zhang, who had fallen into fantasy, back from his brain. Ah, Professor Lu Ping, why are you here? Zhang Su greeted, come and sit together for a while. This time you don't need to drink that scalding potion, come and eat mooncakes. I can't sleep tonight, so I brought Sirius up to have a chat. Lupin pulled the somewhat reluctant Blake to finish at the coffee table. Could it be that you are worried about your werewolf treatment? Professor Sinista asked. It's been fine for so many years, so you don't have to worry about it in the future. He's worried about his kids, Black said to Professor Sinistra. What Zhang Su and Professor Sinista exclaimed at the same time. I just got a letter from an owl, Lupin said shyly. Everyone present could see the happiness and anxiety on his face. After some congratulations, Lupin said to Zhang Su, Zhang, I know you are talented in divination, can I trouble you to do a divination for my child? Back then Zhang Su had divinated his marriage, so Lupin still recognized Zhang Su's divination level. Fortunately, Zhang Su has also learned a lot in this area now, so he doesn't need to rely on spoilers to divination. I'll see if it's a boy or a girl first. After asking Lupin and his wife about the birth date and the expected date of birth of the child, and estimating the date of birth, Zhang Su took out a turtle shell with copper coins, shook it a few times in a special way, and put the copper coins inside were poured onto the coffee table. Hey, it's a girl. Zhang Su was a little surprised. Girls are good. Lupin didn't know when he entered the silly happy mode. I'll look at the others. After Zhang Su put the copper coins on the table into the tortoise shell, he shook the tortoise shell with a fortune-telling technique. After Zhang Su poured the copper coins on the table again, Lupin nervously looked at Zhang Su who was interpreting the copper coins on the table, not daring to show his anger. His nervousness infected Professor Black and Sinista, and they almost held their breath for fear of disturbing Zhang Su. This line looks very moderate. Zhang Su said to Lupin, your child's life has not had any big ups and downs, and it is basically peaceful. It's good to be safe, it's good to be safe. Lupin continued to be silly. Next, Lupin also wants Zhang Su to be his child's godfather, because Zhang Su is also his matchmaker, and he has made great efforts in the process of curing his werewolf. As a result, Lupin's proposal was declined by Zhang Su, and then the blame was thrown back on Harry. There is no one who can be a professor at Hogwarts without a bad brain. The godfather is also the guardian of a child, not much different from the real father. The current situation in the British wizarding world is not optimistic. Maybe Lupin will get a lunch one day if the child can recognize Zhang Su as the godfather, then at least when the situation is at its most dangerous and Zhang Su wants to run away, no one will take his child with him. And if he really ran back with Lupin's daughter at that time, the child would also be raised in his hometown village. What if she and Voldemort's son, childhood sweethearts, get on good terms? Should this sequel switch from two-dimensional to romance or female channel? Chapter 521 No Money. It was the end of September, and the weather in the Hogwarts area was getting colder and colder, especially last night when it rained. The wet and cold weather made many people shiver when they woke up. After getting up, Michael Owen came to the common room to sit for a while as usual, and then went to the cafeteria to have breakfast together after several classmates arrived. In Hogwarts, many students have formed their own small groups. Typical representatives are the Harry Trio and the ex-Malfoy Trio. These small groups often have activities together on campus. Less than a month into school, Michael has made some great friends. Due to little relationship with Zhang Su, Michael often learns some secrets of Hogwarts from him, and then he relayed them to other first-year students, which made him a faint part of their small group head. It's just that when he came to the common room today, he didn't find a table to sit as usual, but squeezed to the front of the bulletin board like other students in the common room. The list of members of this year's Eagle Academy Quidditch team hung on the bulletin board, and many students gathered in front of the list to comment on the names on the list. Michael went through the list 3 times, letter by word, but did not see his name on it. In the first flight lesson at the beginning of school, Michael showed a very high-flying talent, and then he participated in the team selection held last weekend under the recommendation of Mrs. Hooch. At that time, Michael, who was full of repetitions of the feat of Savior Harry Potter becoming an official player in the 1st grade, was a little nervous on the court, but his grades were mediocre. But after all, he is a young athlete who has participated in many official football games, so he quickly adjusted his mentality back. But at that time, everyone had already finished the selection, and we broke up and went to dinner. Just as he was about to leave with a sigh, someone tugged on his sleeve. Owen, this has your name on it. A girl who was also a first-year girl pointed to an inconspicuous piece of paper that was only the size of a palm under the player list and said. Only then did Owen notice that under the gorgeous official roster, there was also an extremely frugal substitute roster. He was relieved when he saw that his name was on the substitute list. At this moment, a piece of parchment flew to the bulletin board, and then it was automatically unfolded and pasted on it immediately afterwards. Exclamations from the students rang out from all around. This is an announcement announcing that the first Hogsmeade week of the term will take place on the first weekend in October. While the students were surprised, Zhang Su standing in front of the bulletin board in front of the cafeteria and his friends were also surprised. I thought this year's Hogsmeade Week was cancelled, said Anthony Goldstein, who was standing beside Zhang Su. Me too. Zhang Su said, I haven't heard Professor McGonagall and other professors say such a thing before. What if something happens again that day? Anthony asked Zhang Su. Of course I ran back. Zhang Su replied. While Hogwarts students from the 3rd year and above were eating breakfast and discussing Hogsmeade Week, the Death Eater's conference room was silent. Whether it was Bellatrix or Snape with a pair of goat's horns on his head, the silent Death Eaters all lowered their heads, not daring to breathe. Voldemort sat on the main seat, scanning the subordinates sitting at the long table with cold eyes, and Lucius Malfoy, who stood up, was trembling and sweating. The cause of the incident was that when the meeting was just held 5 minutes ago, Malfoy, the pseudo-minister of magic, said to Voldemort, My master, the funds of the Ministry of Magic are about to dry up. Yesterday was the day for paying rent and taxes, and the gold coins collected were pitifully small. The big taxpayers in Diagon Alley have basically gone north to throw bandits. The little tax in Knockover Alley is a drop in the bucket, and the Flupan company that produced flu powder that could have collected special taxes has lost contact collectively, sweeping the broom. The company, the Nimbus Racing Broom Company, and other broomstick companies that support the pseudo-ministry of magic have long been beaten by a broom comprador and almost went bankrupt, and now they can only survive by selling their feelings as for gringotts. They said that both of you are asking me to pay taxes, which makes me very embarrassed. Simply save these taxes first, and when you both decide the winner, we will give the taxes to whoever wins. The two sides had nothing to do with the gringotts, which controlled finance. In order not to push gringotts to the other side, both sides chose to swallow their anger. Lao Ma has been thinking about it all day and night since yesterday, but he has not found a solution to this problem. The current team of Death Eaters was raised on Ministry of Magic money, and these people obviously didn't talk about hard work. And most importantly, if you don't have money, you can't buy food. So Lao Ma had to have the courage to raise this issue at this morning's regular meeting. Although Voldemort didn't change his face, he was also confused, and he didn't know how to make money. But fortunately, he is the leader, and the things that the leader doesn't know can be left to his subordinates. As for the idea of asking the group of people in front of him to donate money, he never thought about it, because they had already been made into paupers. Apart from the fact that the Malfoy family may have a little private money, the richest person here is probably Snape, who has benefited from the higher salary of professors after Hogwarts became rich in the past few years. And the heads of the other Death Eaters are also getting bigger. If they earn enough money for a family to spend, many of them can do it, but earning enough money for the Ministry of Magic is not an order of magnitude at all, so please ask someone else to do it. Just when Voldemort was about to go crazy, an unexpected person stood up. When Lao Ma saw his son raise his right hand as if preparing to speak in class, he was so frightened that he was about to pee his pants. Very well, dear Draco, what good solution do you have to solve your father's problem? Voldemort said in a soft tone, just like the elders and juniors usually talk. Classmate Zio Ma stood up nervously, and then stammered out some of his immature methods. After the little horse finished speaking, the old horse tightly grasped the edge of the table with trembling hands. If Voldemort and the other Death Eaters hadn't been here, he would have beaten his son up. But the other Death Eaters saw that someone had stepped forward, and they were happy to have someone top the tank for them, so they all remained silent. Voldemort nodded to the pony, and said, just do what you want, young man. Lucius, you will help your son this time. Lucius had no choice but to nod in agreement. Chapter 522 Make Money. When night fell, the study in Magia's Huang was brightly lit, and the candles burning on the candlesticks made crackling sounds from time to time. Lao Ma was sitting behind the desk. He raised his head slightly, and looked at his son standing motionless across the desk. Mrs. Ma stood by the desk, her worried eyes flicked between the father and son from time to time. The three people in the study didn't speak for almost an hour, and it was Lao Ma who finally broke the silence. Do you think I didn't think of the things you proposed? The old horse said to Xioma, but have you ever thought about the consequences of it? Pony nodded. In this case, why did you bring up these things? The old horse yelled at the pony, do you know how much harm this will do to the Malfoy family? When a person is about to die of thirst, a cup of poison can temporarily relieve him from thirst. Maybe he can find water and a way to detoxify during this time. Xioma ignored his father's anger and did not back down. Said, we have been too high profile for hundreds of years, So when someone is looking for fat sheep, the first thing that comes to mind is the Malfoy family, who seem to have endless gold coins. Draco Madame Ma shouted in surprise. It was the first time she saw her son talking to his father like this. Don't worry, Narcissa. Lao Ma said to his wife, our son has grown up, is sensible, and has his own ideas, which is a good thing. But the old horse said, turning his head to the pony, I don't see any good for the Malfoy family. Then, the old horse said in a stern voice, for 100 years, no matter who is the Minister of Magic, one of the things they have in common is to ban flying carpets from appearing in the British sky. You must know what is behind this matter, an interest group. And you, the son of the Minister of Magic, actually publicly proposed to open the import of flying carpets. I think Scrimgeour and the Indians would be happy to give you a £2,000 medal. But on the list of foreign trade items, we have no other choice. Xiao Ma said loudly, aside from flying carpets, what else can we get enough profit in a short time? Furthermore, those families who unite against a flying carpet and let only their broomsticks fly in the air in Britain, how much energy do they have now? And the tax they pay now is only 1/10 of what they used to be. But they still have enough contacts and favors. As long as they are willing, our family will definitely not end well. Lao Ma said. Then bring them over. Xiao Ma said calmly, as long as there are enough interests, they will stand by our side. Just give them a guarantee that when the Wheel Eyes go bankrupt and they regain the market, we'll ban the import of flying carpets again. And we can make consumers think that those flying carpets are made by the British themselves, just change the packaging. The old horse leaned back on the chair, closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. At this time, the pony wisely didn't bother him. After a long time, the old horse asked, then the Indians will tell their flying carpets to be made in England. I have a plan. Pony said. We can find a third-party agent and let him buy the flying carpet from India, and then we will buy the flying carpet from him, and then hand it over to the family that was originally related to the broomstick for sale. On the one hand, we only need to pay a little profit to avoid the excuse of importing flying carpets directly from India and instead import raw materials from other places. Have you chosen an agent? Lao Ma asked. Xiao Ma didn't answer Lao Ma's question directly, but turned to his mother and said, Mom, you should know the most talked about gossip news a month ago. You mean the incident where someone took the twin sisters of the Paddle family away at the same time? Mrs. Ma asked. The little horse nodded, but the old horse frowned and said, do you want to be tied to a stone and thrown into the lake to feed squid? The pony said confidently, we can get this done without disturbing him. When we rescued Sister Paddle that day, I could see that he would never let Sister Paddle return to his family. For this purpose, at least for now, he must put the scene of that night the show continues. Otherwise, as long as the two sisters are still at Hogwarts, the Paddle family will have an excuse to bring them back. I can use his agent status to discuss this matter with the Paddle family, and the profit that belongs to him can be used as the dowry of the two sisters. And I can also use the reason that he wants to give the two sisters a surprise. Let the Paddle family keep it secret for the time being. At that time, under the cover of this heavy identity, the Ministry of Magic can buy the flying carpet back without signing any documents, and then sell it to the dealer. The Indians have always wanted to sell the flying carpet to the UK. This is an opportunity for the Paddle family to make contributions. As long as it is done properly, they will certainly not mind some irregularities in the initial transaction. From the point of view of the process, the Paddle family is the exporter of India in the entire transaction process. They sold the flying carpet to a non-British person, and the Ministry of Magic only imported some raw materials from this non-British person. Nothing about the Malfoy family. After the little horse finished speaking, the old horse thought for a while, and then said mercilessly, there are too many loopholes. You take it for granted, everything works according to your ideas. If you are writing a novel, you must be rejected. Readers curse to death. You haven't reached the level where the world revolves around you. There will definitely be many unexpected accidents during the period. Do you have a plan to deal with these accidents? In the end, the old horse changed his mind and said, but this method can still be tried. You can find a way to improve your plan, and then you will be responsible for this matter. Lao Ma has nothing to do now. He has to try everything in order to make money. It's not that he didn't expect this method, but if it is not done well, the Malfoy family will have a reputation of betrayal. It's just that reputation doesn't help much in the current situation, so we can only wait until we get through this hurdle. If it was done well, and a few more smoke bombs were thrown, then the Malfoy family could hide behind. Okay. Pony replied happily. Then let's talk about the second thing. The old horse's eyes became sharp again. Let the Death Eaters collect their own taxes in the British district, and only need to pay the amount set by the Ministry of Magic. You know the consequences of the matter. I know. Zyomar replied, if the Ministry of Magic set a quota of 100 galleons, then they will actually collect at least 200 galleons in this name. This will lead to looting across the country. Zyomar said nonchalantly, we can protect the pure blood family from being affected. As for the mixed blood and mudbloods, let them do whatever they want. And we can also levy magic usage tax on any non-pure blood wizards. Under Voldemort's command, pure blood is supreme, and it is politically correct for the mudblood to die. Not only will the pony's approach not anger Voldemort, but it will also be appreciated by him. With Lao Ma's current position, he can't find a reason to refute. After all, this tax cannot be collected on his head. I'll think about this matter again, and I'll let others bring up the specific details when the time comes. Don't mention this matter to others. Lao Ma said. At this time, Lao Ma felt a little tired. Although the plans proposed by his son were feasible to a certain extent, none of them had a good reputation. However, the next finale problem was what gave him the most headache. How did you come up with a way to make money by selling positions in the Ministry of Magic? Ma's tone became as cold as ice and snow at this time. Chapter 523. An owl flew into the Three Broomsticks bar with a thump, spread its wings and prepared to land on the table after spotting the target. Then it was hit by a spell and stopped in midair. Zhang Su, who kept the wine and snacks on the table, reached out and grabbed the owl that was about to fall to the ground, and then untied the letter from its lap. Percy, who had been bragging just now, saw the owl clearly, raised his eyebrows, and found that things were not simple. This is the owl from the London Ministry of Magic. Cedric at the same table also recognized the owl. I wrote to Minister Malfoy yesterday, asking if I could buy a position in the Ministry of Magic with a lot of salary and little work, or even no work. Zhang Su said while opening the parchment letter, it seems that there is news gone. Why don't we capture him for the reward? I just dig a hole 100 feet deep and bury him. It's a good idea. Do you think it's better to dig a round hole or a square hole? Round is more convenient. Zhang Su ignored Percy and Cedric, who were speaking ill of him with black faces, opened the letter and spread it out on the table. Honestly written, Mr. Zhang. No. Go signed, Lucius Malfoy, Minister for Magic. This is the only thing on the parchment. Percy and Cedric looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. While putting away the parchment, Zhang Su said helplessly, look, the Minister of Magic over there really doesn't know how to do business and doesn't have any sense of service. How can there be such a way of driving away distinguished guests? It's not like I can't afford it. Money. If I were him, I would definitely set up a few places that look glamorous, but actually have no rights at all for guests to choose. We must first get the money before we talk about anything. Then which position do you want to buy? Percy asked dumbfounded. Actually, I didn't think about it. Zhang Su picked up his wine glass and said, so I planned to wait for the approval from the other side. I would like to ask you too, which department in the Ministry of Magic is more lucrative? As far as I know, the department with the most oil and water has been sold. Cedric said, I heard that it was auctioned by several people, and the one with the highest bid finally bought it. Oh, what position is it? Zhang Su asked. Cedric pointed to Percy and said, Director of the Order Office. Hiss. Zhang Su's eyes widened in surprise. No way, this position will be sold. Actually, the position is useless. Cedric said, you expect those Death Eaters who pay to become Aurors in order to brag about their face, to obey another one who also wants to gain face. But is it just the command of wizards who have more money than them? That's right. Why don't I write another letter and ask if I can sell me an Auror position? Zhang Su knocked on the table and said to Cedric solemnly, look, even Percy, anyone can be the head of the Auror office, so it should be fine for me to be an Auror. Hey, do you want to be an Auror, Zhang? At this time a female voice sounded from the side. Long time no see, Weasley, Diggory. And NBSP, hey, McGonagall, you and Zhang know each other. Percy's eyes kept scanning between Maggie McGonagall and Zhang Su. Cedric was also surprised, and both he and Percy had weird smiles on their faces. After Maggie pulled an empty stool and sat down next to Zhang Su, she said to Percy, I just met Zhang not long ago, and today I made an appointment with him to talk about some of my works. Zhang Su calculated on the sidelines. Given the age difference between him and Maggie, it is not surprising that Maggie knew Percy and Cedric before graduating from Hogwarts, especially since Percy and she are both Lion's Courtyard. Actually, you can also talk to Percy. Cedric said, the story he has experienced now is also very exciting. Yes. Zhang Su agreed, he participated in the rescue of Professor Bubaji who was kidnapped by Death Eaters. After being rescued, Professor Bubaji is still receiving treatment in St. Mungo's. Not long ago he participated learn about the operation to rescue Ollivander, and later when Ollivander was rescued, he had more than 30 fractures in his body. If Percy hadn't felt that he was not sure that he could beat the guy in front of him, he would have sneaked back to Hogwarts in the middle of the night and sacked him with a sack. Hey, Ollivander was rescued by you? Maggie asked in surprise. Then tell me when you have time. Let him continue talking now. Zhang Su said, he's been bragging about it to us just now. The biggest news on the Daily Prophet today is the news that Ollivander has reappeared and is being treated at St. Mungo's Hospital. Taking advantage of today's Hogsmeade week, Zhang Su asked Percy and Cedric out for a drink to brag, and Percy kept bragging that he played an extremely important role in this operation. Since Magia's Huang was burned, the basement of Voldemort's new address was not suitable for prisoners, so he scattered the captured wizards in other places. After fully knowing the secret of the Elder Wand, Voldemort had no interest in Ollivander, so he found a random stronghold to imprison him. And Ollivander is also worthy of being one of the most famous European wand masters in the world. When he was imprisoned and did not have a wand, he just used the bed legs in the cell in his own hair to make a barely usable wand. Relying on it sent a distress signal. Then the Ministry of Magic, which was short of manpower, asked the Rainbow Squad for support. According to Percy's description, the whole rescue process was very thrilling. At the last moment, several Death Eaters held Ollivander and several other hostages in a room to resist people. Only the unlucky Ollivander happened to be sitting against that wall. After Percy finished bragging, Zhang Su asked Maggie, didn't you agree to meet in the afternoon? Why did you come so early? Our family moved to Hogsmeade not long ago, Maggie replied. What's wrong? Zhang Su asked strangely. There are too few wizards in the area where we live, and there is no way to block the harassment of Death Eaters, so we moved here temporarily. Maggie said, fortunately, my aunt knows a lot of acquaintances here, so she let us rent the house. Zhang Su looked at Cedric, and Cedric knew what Zhang Su wanted to ask, so he said, it's as you expected, and the situation is even worse than you expected. Chapter 524. Mr. Zhang's trip to Hogsmeade ended at Lady Puttiff's tea house. As the saying goes, it's all about acting. When Zhang Su and the others finished their small gathering at the Three Broomsticks, he brought Sister Paddle into Mrs. Puttiff's tea house amidst all kinds of eyes from a group of people. The proprietress of the tea house, Mrs. Puttiff, has been in business for so many years, and it was the first time she saw Hogwarts students bringing two girls to the tea house for consumption, and the two girls were twins. In addition to the proprietress, the young guests in the tea house were also frightened by Professor Zhang's move. Not long after, Zhang found himself as if he had returned to the London Zoo and became the object of crowd watching. Having had the experience of Zhang Panda, he can still hold such a scene, but the Paddle sisters couldn't stand it anymore, and escaped from the tea house without finishing a pot of tea. Just when a group of onlookers felt sorry for this, a well-dressed young aunt walked into the tea house alone and sat opposite Zhang Su. When Mrs. Puttiff gave the new customer the order, she gave Zhang Su a scum-like look. This is what you want. Wales put a gift package wrapped in pink wrapping paper and red ribbon in front of Zhang Su. Thank you. Zhang Su took the gift package. It's just some books. There's no need to pack them in such an ambiguous way. Welsh didn't answer Zhang Su's words, but said with some resentment, I thought it was important for you to ask me for help, but it turned out that I just asked me to help you with a set of business administration textbooks from the London Business School. You can also do these things yourself. Can it be done? I'm not giving you an excuse to be lazy. Zhang Su replied. What's new recently? Zhang Su asked. Ginger's tail was accidentally trampled, does it count? I will avenge whoever did it in October. The sky in Hogsmeade quickly became dark, and Hogwarts students began to return to school in twos and threes. The current situation was tense, and the students had to return to the castle before dinner, and even Zhang Su didn't have the privilege of wandering outside. When Zhang Su was about to walk out of Hogsmeade, he saw Harry and Ginny walking in front of him. It's just that Ginny's movements were a little strange. She checked Harry's robes as she walked. Zhang Su walked up curiously, and asked, Ginny, what are you doing? Are you checking Harry for fleas? I'm checking if there are any other girls' hair on his body, Ginny said to Zhang Su. On the other hand, Harry tried his best to argue, I'm not as popular as Zhang. I can go to Madame Puddif's tea house with 3 beautiful girls one day. Well, you are indeed different from me. Zhang Su nodded and said, you just need to become a girl yourself. Petrochemical Zhang Su dodged Harry's spell, but the spell flew past Neville's nose not far behind him. He stayed on the second floor of that coffee shop for a day. Ginny said to Zhang Su, looking at you now, you can tell that they are up to no good. Zhang Su touched his nose. The pot came a bit suddenly. That's why you should look for it carefully. Zhang Su said seriously, if you can't find other people's hair, it means that he is with a girl with a bald head. So Ginny started sniffing Harry's robes to see if he smelled of someone else's perfume. When Zhang Su saw Harry again, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening at that time. He was studying by himself in his professor's dormitory with a textbook he just got this afternoon, and took notes from time to time. How to run a company is an unfamiliar topic for him, so he takes time to recharge himself while this school year is not busy after all. He himself is at most a talent, not a genius, so if he doesn't want to be eliminated by the long river of history, he can only rely on his own efforts to increase his strength. When Harry's trio walked in, they were no strangers to Zhang Su reading a book they couldn't understand. Find a place to sit by yourself, snacks and tea for yourself. If things are not urgent, wait until I read this point. Zhang Su greeted them. When thinking about a problem, I am most afraid of being interrupted by external influences. Sometimes those flashy ideas are lost, and it takes a lot of effort to find them again. Half an hour later, Zhang Su put down the book and pen in his hand after getting his consent just now. The trio who had been waiting a little bit bored each took a book he put on the coffee table to pass the time. It's just that the 3 people who read the book behaved differently. Hermione occasionally nodded thoughtfully, Harry scratched his head from time to time, and Ron pretended to understand with dull eyes. After pouring tea into the 4 cups on the coffee table, Zhang Su asked, what's the matter with you 3? At this moment, Hermione's worried eyes and Ron's vaguely excited eyes turned to Harry. Harry said to Zhang Su seriously, I have already considered what I said on the first night of school, and I decided to go back and have a look. Zhang Su was non-committal after hearing this, but looked at Ron and Hermione. We decided to go with Harry, said Ron. I remember that the Department of Mysteries was once stolen once. I heard that the stolen thing was a time turner. Why do you still have a time turner? Hermione asked. Zhang Su naturally wouldn't tell her that you and I stole those things together. He said, as long as you have money, you can buy a lot of interesting things. And the one I bought on the black market happened to be it's the one we used to use back then. The 3 of them have no doubts about Zhang Su's explanation, because they all know that the guy in front of him is very wild. The news that he plans to buy a position from the pseudo-Ministry of Magic has spread all over the school today, but he can even contact Voldemort when he needs it. On the internet, it is not surprising to find a few dark wizards to buy things quietly. So when are we going? Harry asked. Don't worry, we have to make some preparations first. Zhang Su said to Harry, time travel in the Big Cross server is a very dangerous thing. At the beginning, we couldn't even determine the time of the destination accurately. We have made many trials and adjustments. Maybe our first stop is the half-built Hogwarts castle, and there may be a chance to worship our own grave. Cold sweat broke out on the heads of Harry's trio. Also, don't expect yourself to change history. Zhang Su said, time is very reasonable and very unreasonable. I once planned to bring something back that went against the track of history, but it fell into the turbulence of time, returned to the place where it should be, and took away a bag of small fish that was placed next to it dry. So, Harry, if you plan to bring back your 1-year-old self to raise yourself, then give up as soon as possible. The sudden sharp turn caused Harry to choke his lungs on a mouthful of tea, and after he was out of breath he quickly denied that he had such a plan. Actually, you can try breastfeeding yourself. Zhang Su said to Harry. Chapter 525 Cursed. Let me negotiate with Malfoy. Zhang Su stared dumbfounded at Scrimgeour, who was sitting across from him, wondering if he should use some magic, physics, chemistry and physics methods to give him a comprehensive inspection. Whether he was dropped or controlled by the Imperious Curse. Mr. Zhang, please put away the bricks in your hand. The stool Scrimgeour was sitting on moved back a bit. Don't worry, I am not a fake Death Eater, nor am I controlled by someone. Then what are you going to talk about with Malfoy? Zhang Su asked strangely. Row the Thames River, or divide England and Scotland? Scrimgeour ignored Zhang Su's mischief, and said directly, we plan to classify St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Illness as a neutral area. Understood. Zhang Su said. If you agree, the Ministry of Magic is willing to offer you a position as an Auror. Screen said outstandingly. Zhang Su curled his lips. The incident of his being rejected by the old horse seemed to be a news. He said, forget it, your Aurors have no money to fish for, and I have no plans to work for your Ministry of Magic. Then how can you agree to a request? Scrimgeour asked the price directly. Materials for 5 copies of Felicity Elixir. Zhang Su offered the price. Deal. Scrimgeour immediately agreed to the price. The material of the Elixir of Felicity is not precious to the Ministry of Magic. The only troublesome thing about refining this potion is the refining process, and if there is a slight mistake in this process, it will fail. And in this turbulent day, Felix Elixir can be said to be a life-saving medicine. This has led Zhang Su to find that many rare materials are already priceless when he is preparing to purchase materials for refining. However, these materials are not available to individuals, but it is easy for the Ministry of Magic. Slughorn also owed Zhang Su a chance to guide him in refining the Felician. Originally, he planned to refine a pot of Felicia before the end of the semester to use in subsequent battles, but at the end of the last school year Zhang Su was driven back by Loudang to take the college entrance examination, so he was not able to refine the Blessing Elixir. But Harry's mind is now full of going back to the past to see his parents. To be safe, Zhang Su decided to carry a bottle with him in case of emergencies, so his current priority is to get some Felicia. After explaining the content of the negotiation to Zhang Su, Scrimgeour left the headmaster's office at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall, what do you think about this matter? Zhang Su turned his head and asked the principal who hadn't spoken just now. It's a good thing, said Professor McGonagall. If St. Mungo's is destroyed, it's no good for anyone. Then Professor McGonagall turned the topic in another direction. You are familiar with the Greengrass sisters? Oh. Zhang Su was stunned for a moment, and then replied, it's okay, I have a good relationship with Daphne, and I have a good relationship with Astoria. Professor McGonagall went on to say, I just found out recently that Astoria has a blood curse, and Daphne is probably no exception. What kind of curse? Zhang Su asked, frowning. Letic. Professor McGonagall said a word that Zhang Su had a little impression of but couldn't remember what it meant. See, Zhang Su paid a thoughtful look, and Professor McGonagall explained to him, wizards with this curse can turn into animals. Same as us? Zhang Su asked. Professor McGonagall shook his head and said, our animagus can transform freely, and the cursed people can only behave like animagus when they are young, but when they reach a certain age, when it reaches the level, it will become an animal forever and cannot be changed back. Zhang Su stood up in surprise, and the single sofa he was sitting on was brought down to the ground with a boom. He remembered that in the plot Astoria died when the child was not very old, and he thought that the so-called death was just a smoke bomb released by Malfoy, and it should actually be that she turned into an animal. For a person, it is a very painful thing to become an animal. After all, not all animals are like Mr. Zhang, who can eat, live, and have their wives assigned by the state. If you are unlucky, you may be cooked by someone who doesn't know. So the two of them. Zhang Su said in disbelief. Professor McGonagall nodded, and then said, not long ago, I saw Astoria transforming on an empty balcony. Then she kept crying there, so I went to ask one time. After lifting the sofa, Zhang Su sat back down again. Since it's a curse, there must be a way to get in touch with the curse. Zhang Su asked while thinking. As he deepened his thinking, cold sweat suddenly broke out on his forehead. My ancestors, the Su family in Hangzhou, might have carried such a curse before. However, he thought about it again. The ancestor Su Bai, who is clearly recorded in the history books, has been married to the Su family for more than 800 years. Over the years, he has been married to many families including his own Zhang family. Impossible not to hear the wind at all in this way, it shows that this curse can be lifted. Then he thought of hibiscus. Vila and humans are not reproductively isolated, so is Vila a similar curse? What's wrong with you? Professor McGonagall also noticed something wrong with Zhang Su at this time. Zhang Su shook his head and pushed aside the wild thoughts in his mind. It's nothing, I just thought of some records that may be similar to it in history. Zhang Su replied. In fact, there is a way to lift this curse theoretically, but there is currently no precedent for treating this curse. Professor McGonagall said. Unicorn blood? Zhang Su asked with a strange face. Although the blood of the unicorn can expel all negative effects on people, it carries a curse itself. However, Hogwarts has not made it public how to drink unicorn blood without being cursed. If this method becomes public, it won't be long before the remaining unicorns become extinct. Professor McGonagall nodded. This is good news, but the problem is that after several battles in the Forbidden Forest near Hogwarts recently, many animals have gone deep into the Forbidden Forest. Because you are familiar with the Forbidden Forest, I plan to ask you to look for unicorns in the Forbidden Forest when you are free. Professor McGonagall said to Zhang Su. I don't think there's a problem. Zhang Su replied. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.